Hello, hello. It's the Kratom Gals. How's everybody doing today?
Hey.
Welcome to the replay of this live stream. This is a series where we share interesting stories and videos of things we uncover all over the internet. It's spicy, it's fun, and it's oh so informative. But please note, this live stream is presented solely for educational purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician or other medical professional. We're a community that comes together to share our knowledge, our stories, and our own experiences. So let's take a moment to go around the room here and have everybody introduce themselves to our viewers. I'm Madalyn Sklar. You may know me as the host of the Kratom Stories podcast, and getting these ladies assemble for the Kratom Gals is just, this all came from an idea I had. I'm so glad we went for it. We said, let's do it. And it's been so much fun coming here each week. If you don't know about me, I'm a very passionate advocate for this plant. I'm always happy to answer people's questions about Kratom. So many times people reach out to me, they hear my story, and it connects with them and they want to learn more about Kratom. So welcome everyone. Gals, y'all want to go around the room and we'll have each of y'all introduce yourselves? Misty, are you ready to go?
Yeah. Well,
I know you're like posting away. You're like doing all the things with social media. You're a social media queen.
My name is Misty Brown. I'm a 5-year Kratom consumer / activist / advocate, and Kratom has been saving my life from an 11-year addiction to pain pills. Now I consume it for my chronic pain, anxiety, and depression.
Awesome. My name is Jennifer Gillis, also known as Winifred Jenkins, and I'm also a 5-year Kratom consumer. I take it for chronic pain. It's changed my life, and I love that Madalyn started this so we can come together each week with everybody and just, look over all the misinformation that's out there and correct it. Stomp it out.
Yeah.
Glad to be here, though.
Stomp it.
Yeah. And I'm Venus Usher from Delaware, or the dog ate my dentures. And I found Kratom back in 2017, and it's the only thing that helps my interstitial cystitis, my fibro, my abdominal adhesions, and anxiety, so many things. And I just want everybody else to feel that freedom and from the labels, from your diagnosis labels. So I want everybody else to feel that as well.
Awesome. Thank y'all all for being such amazing advocates. We definitely make a great team coming together, and individually and together as a team. There's a comment here from Elena asking, is Kratom addictive? Who would like to take that question?
Not for me.
Not for me.
Didn't they ask that last week?
I don't know.
Yeah, I never crave it.
Stay away from the extracts.
I forget to take it sometimes.
I mean, we just consume the whole leaf Kratom powder, and it's not addictive.
I'm not
from
even
my
on
personal
it today.
experience.
Normally I dose before we come on, but today I'm just taking a day off.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference between being addicted and dependent on something.
100%.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, yes.
When you're like us and you take it for chronic pain, we were, well, I know, speaking of me personally, I was ready to spend the rest of my life taking opiates or, whatever to control my pain, just to live a normal life somewhat. But I, glad things happened the way they did, because I'd much rather take this every day.
100%. Because many of us that come from the chronic pain community were in pain management, and what we took for our pain were high-powered opioids. And all of us here no longer take those. We consume a plant. And are we dependent on it? Well, I certainly am. I was dependent on the opioids. I wasn't addicted to them, but I was dependent on them so I could have quality of life. And I just changed that to a plant. So I hope that answers your question. Anyway.
I was definitely addicted to it. I was begging, borrowing, stealing to get more. I was doing immoral shit.
Back in your pain management days with opioids?
Yeah, my 11 years,
Yeah.
My
I mean, when that's all you think about,
Yeah. Yeah, John's here. Hey, John. Good to see everybody. Y'all pop in the comments. Let us know you're here. We're doing basically a special episode today of the Kratom Gals, we're going to be watching in its entirety the congressional science briefing that happened yesterday on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The American Kratom Association, along with members of Congress, top leading Kratom researchers, as well as a handful of Kratom advocates. They all went to Capitol Hill. This took place yesterday. It was live streamed, and we have the replay of it, and we're going to play it in its entirety. It's 2 hours long, and this is going to be so interesting because we're going to hear from the leading experts on this plant and sharing. I imagine they're sharing the latest information. Does anybody know for sure, like, what?
I didn't watch it, so I don't. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
a couple of
assuming.
times they even say, like, this hasn't been released publicly, or, so
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is okay. So this is all like brand new information, then, is what you're saying. Okay, cool. Yeah, this will be like super interesting for us to all watch together. And so what we're going to do also, in being a little bit different, is we're going to take ourselves off the screen because we want to watch it. We don't want to have too many interruptions. Y'all are free to comment, but what we're going to do is we're going to watch these in segments. We're going to, just watch all the researchers do their thing, and then we'll come back on, talk about it for a little bit. We'll watch when they have all the advocates come on and talk, and when they're completely done, we'll come back and talk, and we'll talk at the end. But we know this is going to take us a while to go through all this. So that's our plan for today. Glad y'all are all here. I think this is going to be really interesting to watch. I have not watched any of it. And Dr. Heidi Sikora is here. She's in the house, and she was
Hey,
here.
Dr. Heidi.
We're going to see her speak. Heidi, we're playing the whole thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing your side. I haven't watched any of this yet. So I'm really looking forward to watching it together with everybody. It's one of the things we do here at the Kratom Gals is we don't just watch all these video clips of things to talk about. Also, when these types of things happen, we can just come together and watch together as a group and discuss it afterwards. Also, Laura Romney's here. Laura is in the house.
Hi, Laura.
Another huge Kratom advocate. It's always nice seeing all the big advocates hanging out with us. So we're going to watch this in its entirety together. So we'll take a few occasional breaks to come in and talk. So let me just adjust all the things. There's so many things on the screen. All right, so we're going to watch this. I'm going to take us off the screen. Looking forward to everybody's thoughts when we come back on. So let me get this. Let me take us off the screen. It's a process, y'all. Be patient.
Oh, thank you, John. That's so sweet.
Okay, I got us off the screen, but everybody needs to mute themselves. So we're not going to be chatting. We're just going to watch this together. So are you ready? Here we go.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here today for this important congressional briefing on Kratom. I want to extend my sincere gratitude to Representatives Mark Pocan of Wisconsin and Jack Bergman of Michigan for their leadership as co-sponsors of the Federal Kratom Consumer Protection Act, or KCPA. Their tireless work has been pivotal in ensuring that the voices of millions of American consumers who rely on Kratom for their health and well-being are heard. We're also fortunate to have members of your staff from both of the congressmen, and they specialize in FDA issues. With us today, I'd like to personally acknowledge their presence and thank them for their efforts to ensure evidence-based policy protects the rights of Americans to make informed choices on how Kratom can help with Americans with making informed choices to support their health and well-being. We understand that potential votes and other scheduling demands will require some participants to come and go as needed, but the briefing is being recorded and will be available for review in its entirety. As chairman of the American Kratom Association and a former member of Congress myself, I understand firsthand the importance of providing members with their staff with accurate science-based information to help guide their decision-making process. The purpose of today's briefing is to share with you the latest advancements in scientific research and public policy that shed light on the safety profile of Kratom and real-life experiences of consumers across the nation. We have an outstanding lineup of experts here today who will provide invaluable insights. Our first panel will feature a group of leading scientists who have dedicated their careers to studying Kratom and its impact on health, and I'm honored to introduce them, and I will then introduce the second panel, and we'll get off to the races. First of all, we have Dr. Christopher McCurdy from the University of Florida, Dr. Edward Boyer from Ohio State University and Harvard Medical School, Dr. Kirsten Smith from Johns Hopkins University, and Dr. Jack Henningfield to my left. Is that appropriate today? Okay. On the political spectrum, I don't know. Dr. Jack Henningfield, also from Johns Hopkins. These distinguished experts will share their groundbreaking research on kratom, offering evidence-based perspectives on its safety and efficacy. Dr. Nora Volko, Director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, we deeply appreciate her continued support and research in the potential benefits and risks of kratom use. We're grateful to her thoughtful contributions to today's discussion. Following our scientific panel, we'll hear from passionate kratom advocates who've witnessed firsthand the positive impact kratom can have on individuals and communities. Their personal stories and advocacy efforts will reflect the very real positive impact kratom has had on their lives and countless others. I will introduce them once the first panel concludes. As we move forward today, I encourage you to listen with an open mind and consider the significant role that science, experience, and common sense regulation can play in ensuring that kratom remains a safe option for consumers who rely on it for their well-being. Once again, thank you to everyone who's made this briefing possible. Let's work together to protect kratom consumers and ensure the sound evidence-based policies guide the future of kratom regulation in the United States. And Congressman Mark Pocan, who's one of the sponsors of the KCPA, could not be here today, but I'd first like to recognize Malika, is it Bernew? Barrow, okay, from Pocan's office to make her statement, and then Congressman Jack Bergman. That's right. I apologize. I should have done that now. Congresswoman, we're so thrilled that you could be here today. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay. Thank you all so much. My name is Malika Barrow. I help cover healthcare issues for the congressman. And again, just this is a brief statement from him. My apologies that you are with me today instead of him. He is very sorry that he wasn't able to make it, but he got called back to the district at last minute yesterday. So thank you all for being here. My apologies for being unable to be here today with everyone. You are in for a fantastic panel of experts and individuals with lived experience, especially Ms. Sikora from my home state of Wisconsin. As a member of Congress, I have worked with federal representatives in both parties to continue the research and legal use of kratom due to its promising help in a number of health conditions, as well as its ability to help many people overcome addiction. I've been moved by the many personal stories of people across the nation who use kratom. The data and stories that you hear today will be able to highlight the importance of legislation like my bill, the Federal Clarity for Kratom Consumers Act, which would require the FDA to hold a hearing and establish a task force on the health and safety of kratom products and provide consumers with some more clarity on how the FDA regulates kratom. I'm grateful to everyone here today for engaging in this important conversation. And again, my sincere apologies for being unable to join you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Malika. Congressman Bergman.
That's me. Thank you. By the way, that was. Should I sit like this so you can just see me like that? Is that okay? You spend half of your time adjusting your positions around here. In this case, it was just adjusting the chair. What you're sitting in here is the Veterans Affairs Committee hearing room that was just, if you will, redone as part of the canon renovation here. And it's probably, if not the most impactful, elegant, powerful design of a committee hearing room that is in anywhere here on Capitol Hill, because it represents not only in some cases the soul of America, it represents the individual souls, the men and women who have served our country to ensure that we are still here. So normally when we're having a committee hearing, I sit up there on that. And we have to remember that no matter where we are in the seniority list, we all start out, as that brand new private, or that brand new second lieutenant for those of us who serve, or that brand new employee of a company, or that brand new entrepreneur, or that brand new something. So we all start at the beginning. We don't start somewhere in the middle, okay? But we get to where we're going because we keep doing the right thing for the right reason. So having said that, I'm sorry that Mark couldn't be here today because he's a great partner in this, because the only thing I feel bad for the American people for, you do not see Democrats and Republicans working together all day, every day across the aisle to do good policy and good law. And we know we got challenges. We know we got nationwide mental health crises. We know that there are issues out there that need to be solved. And let's get specific here with Kratom. It has significant potential to help overcome addiction, to treat withdrawal, to basically get people back on the road to a successful life. Now, Lou Correa and I, Lou's from Los Angeles area, and we came in together as freshmen. Lou's a Democrat, and we are partners in the PATH caucus. For those of you who may or may not know, PATH stands for Psychedelic Advancing Therapies. Okay, new ways to look at things for better mental health and outcomes. We believed also that really the name should be Good Path, because who doesn't want to be on a good path in life, right? But in this case, good would stand for get off opioid dependency. So when you think about in the Kratom space and what you're doing and have done, how do we get people off of dependency to other things, especially opioids? That is the challenge, but we can't have it be the Wild West. It's got to be there's got to be significant involvement of the medical research community, of the, if you will, for lack of a better term, those who would create the products, the community, the folks like us, as members of Congress to get behind good things and to ensure that and it's largely policy more than law, have good solutions put in place. So, when we meaning Mark and I joined him in introducing, HR 5905, which is the Federal Kratom Consumer Protection Act. We can have we have these long names for all these bills. We usually give them an acronym, and then nobody knows what the acronym really stands for because they all sound alike. But the point is, you don't dictate. You work with others. You work with the FDA. You work with industry. You work with therapists. You work with the academic researchers. This is all about with and together. So having said that, I'm looking forward to hearing the panels today, because just know you have advocates here in the elected space that are with you, because I know you're here because you have an interest in the space. You're already involved in better outcomes and better, if you will, mental health, and which will hopefully lead to better physical health for people around the world. And let's face it, how many veterans in the crowd here? Okay. When you're in the military, we know that we have been experimented on a few ways, different forms, even if it was just different tactics of let's try to attack the hill this way rather than that way. The point is, the perfect group, I believe, in most cases to start with when you're advancing new ways of doing things is the veterans community. Because we understand what service to our country means, and we're willing to serve in a different way to try things to help us be better as a country and be better as a world. So with that, I'll just conclude and say thank you very much for the opportunity, and I look forward to listening.
Thank you very much, Congressman. And as I noted in the lineup, we'll start with Dr. Christopher McCurdy. There's a button in front of you. Push it. It'll flash talk. And then when you're done, please turn it off.
Thank you very much. I'm Chris McCurdy. We were joking last night a little bit that if you go back to ground zero of research and science in the United States, I think I might be it. So we started working on this plant almost 20 years ago, long before it was even recognized by the DEA or the FDA, because we saw potential all the way back then. And so I want to bring you up to date from where we've come in those 20 years along a tremendous journey where we didn't know much. And in the last 5 years, we've been part of over $60 million worth of federal funding to investigate this plant and the medical potential. About $12 million of that came to the University of Florida directly under grants that I supervised along with our team. And the other $50 million was at the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, or NCATS, who is moving towards the first clinical trial of mitragynine or mitragynine. That grant provided 5 kilograms of purified material in pharmaceutical grade that will go into clinical trials, hopefully in the next year. So we are looking at this from not only a botanical standpoint and the promise of the plant, but indeed we want to see if there is a true pharmaceutical path that could be pursued. So I'm not here to get rid of the plant from the commerce perspective. I want it to be accessible to everybody, always do, always have. Never has it been my intention to turn it into only a pharmaceutical product. However, just like we've seen with other plants and other compounds, we know that some of these compounds can be isolated and beneficial at a highly controlled clinical level as a pharmaceutical. So that to just say what we've been doing and where we're headed. The pictures that you can see on this slide above you are actually kratom trees growing in Malaysia on the very top. And at the bottom are kratom trees growing in Apopka, Florida at the University of Florida. And so we have been able to replicate a lot of the work, a lot of the understanding of what's happening in Southeast Asia for scientific purposes at the University of Florida. And we have probably the most soup to nuts program in the world, investigating from seed all the way to consumer what is happening. And I'm very proud of the support that we've had of advocates, the industry, and the federal government to get to this point, and the state of Florida. Okay, so the obvious question that everybody first asks is kratom a threat or a therapeutic? Of course, we know, everyone in this room knows, but I'm going to go backwards a little bit and make sure that on the record we have a good understanding of what the foundational start is. So is it a threat or is it a therapeutic? We know it's been anecdotally used for centuries for chronic pain, for mood elevation, for energy, for opioid use disorder and alcohol use disorder now in the United States. More recently, we know that it has potential in stimulant use disorder, in lessening the ability of desire for methamphetamine. There are adulterated and contaminated products that have been reported, and that's put a black mark on the whole industry as a whole. There's claims that kratom is severely addictive and deadly. And our job as scientists is to figure out where all of these claims fall. So we know that there's potential benefit from a medical standpoint, but we know there's potential harm. And understanding where that line is vitally important in making sure that this product is used properly and safely. I've been able to consult with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration most recently on their single ascending dose trial, which I'm not going to speak about today, but I'm happy to answer questions on. I've spoken to the World Health Organization and the United Nations in briefings on this as well. And all of those agencies had looked at one time or another to ban kratom from either the United States or global. None of that has happened. And a good reason that none of that has happened is most of the people that are sitting at this table right here. The research that has been conducted that has shown some efficacy. And we can't say that it's entirely safe, and we can't say that it's entirely efficacious yet, but we're certainly getting closer to being able to make those statements with scientific validity. I don't do very much of this work. I direct a huge team, and I acknowledge them every time before I really get going. Because if it isn't for those folks, I wouldn't be able to talk to you and be able to share all the work that we've done. I'm not going to go through and name everyone. I would like to point out Scott Eggers here in the room. He's been very important in helping us put those trees in Apopka and really get our program off the ground from a horticultural standpoint. Kelly Dunn is another person that really helped us from the very early days. He funded our research before anyone else would, and really got us enough preliminary data to get things going. And then finally, Jeremy Stedding has been incredibly important in the whole process as a UF alum and as a supporter of our work as well. So thank you to all of you, and thank you to the National Institute on Drug Abuse and the taxpayers for funding so much of this work. So,
You gotta hit it hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit it hard. So we all know Mitrigyna speciosa. Something that people may not know is the whole genus Mitrigyna was named after the fact that the leaf is shaped like a mitres hat or a bishop's hat. And so if you take that leaf and turn it 90 degrees counterclockwise, it is supposedly shaped like a bishop's hat, and that's where the genus got its name. Mitrigyna speciosa is one of 10 species in that genus, and of course we know it's a member of the Rubiaceae family or the coffee family, and it's found in Southeast Asia. And I won't go through this because everybody in this room, for the most part, understands what we're here and what we're talking about. But what I do want to point out is something that is vitally important in terms of a difference, and that's kratom use in Southeast Asia. So the traditional use of this plant, and these pictures are pictures that I took when I was in Malaysia of a tree in the wild. And then up in the top right is once those leaves are plucked from the tree, they're quickly boiled into a decoction. It's not really a tea. That boiling takes place for 2 to 3 hours to try and extract as much of the alkaloids out of that. And then those alkaloids are packaged up in baggies or in plastic bottles that are sort of takeaway from the roadside stand that you see there in the middle, where folks can take those with them for their daily consumption. So it's not too different, if you think about it, from a coffee shop in the United States where someone will go and get their coffee for the morning. Many people stop by these roadside stands, which are completely criminalized and illegal in Malaysia, but they're there, and most people are dealing with that every day. So the tea is really utilized by these field workers for pain relief, for stimulant to improve their work capacity, to reduce their opioid withdrawal, because many of these rural farmers are actually using raw opium as their pain treatment. And when they run out of the access to raw opium, they actually increase their utilization of kratom juice, and they're able to avoid withdrawals. And that was really what pointed us in the direction of saying, hey, there might be something from nature that can help us in the opioid crisis. And opioids are from nature. And I've always believed that there's a balance in nature, and that there's a problem, there's a solution. We just have to be able to recognize where that is and find that. So leaves are chewed in Thailand. So it's a very different method of administration in Thailand. And then most Kratom raw material in the USA, of course, is from Indonesia. So even though these are all in the southeast of Asia, you're still talking about differences in geographical regions. Almost if we were to talk about wine regions of the world, we know that terroir makes a difference. And we've been fortunate enough to study plants from each of these areas. And one thing that's good is that the alkaloid consistency is there in all regions, including Florida and other commercial ventures that are in Hawaii. We know that the predominant agent, active agent that we believe is the predominant active agent is mitragynine, coinanth alkaloid. And then this is the picture of kratom use in the USA, which we know is very different. So we go from fresh leaf being consumed directly as it's picked off the tree to dried leaves, and you don't have to think too long and hard about it, but dried spices are different than fresh spices, and so you can certainly realize there is a difference. Current estimate in the USA is more than 15 million users. I think this was a number that came out in 2019, pre-pandemic. I think we're well over 20 million on a conservative basis. And I say that because every day I drive home, I pass 4 gas stations, and they always had CBD signs in them, but in the last couple of years, they all have kratom signs. So I know that it's become more mainstream. One of the things that we've tried to make a strong point about as a team of scientists is that not all kratom is equal, and there's an important distinction between native leaf and extract products. I like to look at it as we consider everything kratom, just like we consider the entire spirits industry alcohol. So you have products that are like seltzers or light beers, and you have products that are 190 proof Everclear. And now we're in that sort of realm in the kratom space, but we call everything kratom. We don't differentiate between those, and there's a significant difference between those. And I don't have time to go into that today. There's a lot of alkaloids that we've isolated over time, and we're studying those alkaloids, and I'm not going to go into science. But therapeutic potential, what we're really interested in is opioid detoxification. We're looking at medication-assisted therapy. So very much like buprenorphine or methadone, is this something that could be utilized to really help individuals transition off of hardcore opioid prescription or illicit use to something that's we consider to be much more effective, although I can't say that officially yet. Lack of real standardized products has made clinical trials very difficult. To try and get around that end, I need a new clicker. To try and get around that end, this was our efforts, as you already saw at the University of Florida, growing trees. That's Brian Pearson, who most recently left our program and went to Oregon to head up a research station in Bend, Oregon, which kind of was a dream job for him to sit on the river and in the mountains and enjoy cherries instead of kratom. So we still, in fact, I met with him yesterday and I told him that he was going to be visualized today here. We have worked with our plant counterparts, and we have figured out many of the biosynthetic pathways within the plant. We have worked to develop the profiling of the leaves, and this is important. I think this is one of the most important things to talk about today. Is I had a student from Thailand that was working in our lab, and she taught us how to chew kratom leaf. And she made a very good point that I'd never realized before in all the time that I've been over to Southeast Asia. But they specifically go to the 3rd or 4th leaf bunch on the branch, leaves that are fully mature to chew. They won't chew the newly emerged leaves. And so I said, there's something scientifically there. And what we found, and it's hard to see in this slide, but what we found is once you get into those more mature leaves, the mitragynine concentration is maximum. In the early acute or the very emerging leaves, another alkaloid, speciosialatin, is the most abundant. And why I say this is important today is because what we've seen in the marketplace is a shift in alkaloid content. Mitragynine is still the first and most abundant alkaloid. Speciosialatin used to be one of the least abundant, but now we see it as the second most abundant alkaloid. And what we think is happening, hypothetically, based on the science that we've done, is that the demand is so great that the suppliers can't keep up with the demand, and so they're harvesting less mature leaf material. That's creating this change in alkaloid profiling. So why is that important at all? And I'll try to wrap this up quickly. Maybe you can advance the slides for me. You can skip this one. What's important is this is a snapshot of many commercial products that we've done in collaboration with Dr. Smith here, looking at a wide swath of the United States marketplace. And we haven't published this yet. We're actually up to about 360-ish samples that we've run through this from all over the United States. And what we found was that it's very consistent in the marketplace. The alkaloid profiling is very consistent. Mitragynine is the major thing. And importantly, that 7-hydroxymitragynine is almost non-existent now in the marketplace in material. And I think that a lot of our work helped to drive that, that desire to eliminate 7-hydroxy. However, as many of us know, if you can advance to the last slide, the market has seen an infiltration of 7-hydroxy isolate or 7-hydroxy synthetic components. And this is the first time that this is publicly being shown anywhere. What this is a fingerprint. We have fingerprinted what the alkaloid profiling looks like in native leaf of kratom. And most products that we've tested, including extracts, meet this fingerprint. So that's on the left. And that big blue arrow on the left is where 7-hydroxy would be. 7-hydroxy is not present in the leaf materials. If we look at the graph on the right, that is a mass spec tracing of a 7-hydroxymitragynine tablet or product that's in the marketplace. And you can see that it's almost the most abundant thing there. But what is the most abundant thing there is mitragynine. And this is synthetically created from a mitragynine isolate or concentrate. And then there's several compounds in that tablet that we have no idea what they are. Meaning we have no idea what the harm could be or the risk or what's there. But anybody, including you know, someone that watches Sesame Street, which one is different and which one is similar, you can definitely see that the one on the right is totally different than the one on the left. And this is concerning for all of us as scientists because this product is making a huge impact in the marketplace right now, and it is not kratom. The bottom line is this is being marketed as a kratom product, and as I said earlier, we lump all things together as being a product, and this is something that needs attention of authorities, and we've alerted many of them already. And we're working on putting out more information on what's going on with this. The last thing I will say is that what's frightening from this perspective is no forensic lab in the United States has the capability to search for 7-hydroxymitragynine. They all use mitragynine as the surrogate for kratom use. And if someone was to have an adverse event or overdose on this product, it will show it being kratom because it only analyzes for mitragynine. So we're working with forensics, trying to change the way that forensic labs in the United States even look at these products to increase the analysis. And that's what I'd just like to leave you with. And I took way too much time, but I appreciate your attention.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. McCurdy. We'll next hear from Dr. Boyer. Oh, is it you? Okay, sorry, Dr. Smith.
Don't freak me out. Okay. Good morning, everybody. It is an honor to be here, and hopefully the clicker will work for me. Okay, it's kind of working. So I just want to say that any views or opinions expressed today by me do not necessarily reflect those of Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. And these are my disclosures as well. I'm an assistant professor at Johns Hopkins. So picking up where Chris left off, we have a lot of products all under the Kratom umbrella. And again, for all the reasons he just stated, it really is important from a clinical and forensic toxicology standpoint to really define what we mean by Kratom. And I can't stress that we need a better taxonomy than we currently have, so that what I consider to be mainstream Kratom, like everything on here, I would draw a circle around this mainstream Kratom. This has all been around for a while. The products that Chris just mentioned, they are not on here for a reason. And I think it's just important to keep that in mind. Oh, this clicker is horrible. So, 2007, Kratom first is documented in the case report literature. Dr. Boyer will probably talk more about that. And this really did come at a time in which we had a convergence of crises, psychiatric health, pain, chronic pain, and then, of course, polydrug epidemic. And we still have these epidemics, right? This has not changed. But Kratom is part of this bigger story, and that people were looking for something. And many of the reason I got into this personally is meeting people in treatment settings who were really not getting their needs met. And they were looking for some alternative because the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry was either not available or not helping them anymore. And so that's how I got into this. And if we fast forward to 2024, we see a lot of the same, and I'm going to talk about how the motivations have changed, but who is actually using now? Go back to the prevalence estimates briefly, we really don't have great prevalence estimates. We need a better range than we currently have, because I agree with Chris. I do think it's over 10 million. I don't know how many daily users there are, but it's certainly in the many millions. And for context, there are about 34 million cigarette smokers in America still, right? So many millions this is not niche as a marketplace. It is something that does require attention and regulation. Most people are in their mid-30s on average. It is used between men and women pretty equally, unlike Southeast Asia, where it's more males reporting use. And actually, the Kratom using population with respect to income, education, looks a lot like the general population. There might be some more health conditions among this population, but in many other ways, it's actually very, compared to some populations I've studied that use illicit drugs, this population is very diverse, and it doesn't look like just one thing, which I think is really interesting. Most people are using daily at this point, or they're using recreationally and occasionally, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Those who are using daily are typically using 2 to 4 times per day on average. And here is a bunch of stuff, right? It's a little overwhelming, but I want to walk you through some of this because it's the most granular data we have to date with respect to Kratom use patterns in the United States or globally. And what we did when I was still at NIDA is I led a study. Chris was actually a mentor on this. And we ended up doing what's called ecological momentary assessment, where we gathered across 357 participants, data at random and scheduled intervals on a study's smartphone application. So we know when people wake up, we know when they go to sleep. Everything is very structured and standardized. And we had over 13,000 unique Kratom use events that were identified during this 15-day period. And we use those to do kind of an analysis to see, what are the patterns of use within this sample. And you can hopefully see, we have group A at the top. They're using most frequently, all the way down to group E, which is using the least frequently. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that you can't really see it, but these are the hours of the day spread out at the bottom of that graph. And what this is showing us is that most people, no matter how much they're actually using, are tending to use more during the first half of their waking hours. And this is important because what we didn't see was binge-like use or heavy late-night use or things like that. We see people using this the times of day when they actually are trying to be most productive. And we know people in the sample were employed or in school. So these are people who are living their lives actively and using this as part of their daily regimen. And I think that's going to be increasingly important to keep in mind as we go. This clicker is really just something else. Okay, so This is a curve that is based on all of these thousands and thousands of data points showing that across products, and I should say most products in the sample were whole leaf products, not all of them, that the time course of effects are peaking about 1 hour. And we see this in the lab study. I have a clinical trial at Hopkins right now. We're seeing about the same thing. So this is not a substance in which you take it and it's lasting for 12 hours. And it's not something that you're taking and it lasts for 12 minutes, right? It has a very nice orderly time curve, and this is across multiple different doses. So it is kind of an average. It's not specific to a particular dose or product. This here is showing motivations for use, and these are proximal motivations in real time. So when we look at why are people using, not broadly, but in the moment, we see that analgesia, essentially pain-killing effects, are being sought out, but also, and this is really important, the stimulatory effects, so increasing mood, focus, productivity, energy. These are, again, what people would want as part of daily living, right? They're not necessarily wanting to feel, quote unquote, high or intoxicated, which I should say we did evaluate. We asked about that. And that did not even make it into this graph because it was not endorsed at a high enough rate. People do endorse wanting to feel good, which is very different than wanting to feel intoxicated or high. And I think that again, is an important point to keep in mind. So acute effects, so these are very much in keeping with what people are seeking out. Energized, focused, alertness. We see some people not experiencing any effects, but that's actually because we had a very long follow-up window. And so some of those acute effects had already peaked by the time we had gotten these follow-up data. But again, to emphasize stimulatory and analgesic effects at low and at high serving sizes. This is kind of an important finding because a lot of times people say lower doses are really for more stimulatory effects, and higher doses are for pain-killing effects. That's actually not what we're finding, both qualitatively and when we look at things like this. It really is. I think when you get to a certain serving size, you do have a slightly different thing, but that's over 12 or 13 grams, which not everyone is using that much. So instrumental use and compatibility with daily living. Again, this narrative of how is this fitting into a person's life? There's a lot of data I'm not showing. We know what people are doing when they're doing, what activities they're engaged in. So there's a ton of stuff I'm not showing. What this slide is showing is what we ask people at the end of the day for these 15 days, which is to reflect upon how did the kratom effects you experienced this day fit within your daily roles and obligations? Were they helpful? Were they compatible? Were they a hindrance? And by and large, across all of our different groups, what we've seen here and what we've seen in another sample where we assess this is people are overwhelmingly saying that these kratom products are not only compatible with their daily living, but also very helpful in them meeting their daily roles and obligations, which is part of this instrumental use thing. So people, like when I drink coffee this morning, that's instrumental use. And that first one, compatible and helpful, the way I like to really help people understand this is it is kind of like a cup of coffee. It is not only compatible, but it is helping me give this talk a little better than I would if I had not had my coffee. That second one there, where people endorse this is compatible, but it's not necessarily helpful, that's more like a glass of wine, right? Or a cocktail. I could have a drink at the end of the day. It's not incompatible with my life. It's not necessarily helpful either. So it's not a hindrance. And that's the big takeaway. What we've seen in almost all of the samples that we've assessed this in is it's not a hindrance, right? And we'll get into for some where it can be a hindrance, but by and large, it's not. I do want to touch on the harm reduction point just a minute, because this is how, in my estimate, one reason why kratom was not scheduled in the first place. And I think that remembering the public benefit versus harm of this is not a trivial point. And so we know, and we've known for a while, even going back to Southeast Asia, people using kratom products in the United States to attenuate withdrawal from many substances. And in this sample, people weren't doing that because they had already gotten off of those substances years ago. So we have people who've been using, in this sample, 93% have been using for more than a year. Some had been using over a decade. And we see that the group A, who's taking kratom more frequently, not necessarily higher doses, but just more frequently, they were more likely than the other groups to be using as a long-term substitute for opioids. They were also more likely to perceive kratom as life-saving. they were also much more regimented in their patterns of use, which is what we see with a maintenance medication type regimen. I'm not calling kratom a medicine. I'm making no medical claims here. And I'm talking about products, not pharmaceuticals. So this is very much real world use that people are adapting to their lifestyle and needs, whether it is for going and having a pre-workout kind of drink, which we know is also happening, or for this harm reduction. And they're not mutually exclusive. Many people are naming multiple reasons. So kratom physical dependence and addiction, I am, believe it or not, the world expert on kratom use disorder. Shockingly, there aren't many of us. Darshan Singh in Malaysia would be my Asian counterpart. And so what kratom use disorder is essentially DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for substance use disorder applied to kratom. And this is important because it's a very widely used assessment method. So I and colleagues have assessed this in this sample and others. And what we see here is that oftentimes people don't meet criteria. When they do, you need 2 symptoms to be met in order to meet a diagnostic criteria of at least mild. And we see that when people do meet a diagnostic threshold, it is typically mild to moderate. And then when we look at the individual symptoms, which is absolutely very critical, we see that a lot of these symptoms are characteristic of what we call physical dependence, which is defined by the tolerance or withdrawal. And that could be using to avoid withdrawal. So again, when I drank my coffee this morning, if I didn't drink my coffee, I was going to get very fatigued. I was going to get a headache. That is a withdrawal symptom. So we do know, I believe at this point, it's very fair to say that using daily use of kratom or regular use of kratom will lead to these withdrawal or tolerance symptoms, but they are described as fairly manageable and mild to moderate in nature. I'm actually doing a supervised withdrawal study at Hopkins, and we are looking at physiological and every other way of assessing withdrawal. That's what we're doing right now. So going and picking up kind of where Chris had mentioned, risky or safe or dangerous. So we have very few published case reports on kratom-related morbidities and mortalities. It is a shockingly small number. And I have read every single one of them, right? And so we don't have a lot globally, and we have a few pharmacokinetic studies. Of these studies, which I don't have time to get into, no serious adverse events occurred. We did have some GI upset, which again, given the plant material, is almost understandable because it's kind of pungent. I do want to touch on the FDA single ascending dose study very quickly. I cannot read this far, and I didn't. So this setup, I'm gonna wing it here. We're gonna see how well I do for those of you who can actually read this better. But FDA did get up to 12 grams across 8 cohorts. So this is 40 healthy adults, and within each cohort, there were 6 who received kratom and 2 who received placebo. Again, no serious adverse events. This is a big deal, right? This is part of how we define safety. Of the adverse events, vomiting was the only one that occurred at a rate greater than placebo, and it was when healthy volunteers took 8 grams or more. And that's a lot of material to consume. If you're not a daily kratom consumer and you take 8 grams of anything, that's a lot of material. And so the fact that that was the only adverse effect that differed from placebo is really interesting. And it's also in keeping with what we saw in other studies of where adverse events were observed, which were GI upset. They did not see strong indicators of abuse potential. This is not an abuse potential study. They are moving forward with that because they have found that this is safe and well tolerated. And so I should also note too that they did not have strong indicators within that abuse potential paradigm. In this drug effects questionnaire is what they used, of feeling intoxicated or high. And that's in keeping with what at NIDA, when I was a postdoc there, we did a small sub-study, and we had 10 kratom consumers come in. They took their own product at their own self-selected doses between 1.1 and 10.9 grams. No adverse events, and there's a lot of ecological validity here. So the FDA study, that was a well-characterized kratom material, these folks are taking whatever they're buying, right? So this is not, we're not selecting what is an ideal standard. We are seeing what actually is going on. And unlike FDA, we did find some higher ratings of liking, which I think is interesting because, and actually not surprising, because if people are using kratom daily, obviously they like it. So there's a question of, what abuse potential indicators would be found again among Kratom naive consumers, and it might not be that high. We did not see intoxication. We did not see impairment. And that's both subjective report as well as objective psychomotor tasks. And in participant interviews, we did get some signals of serotonin excess, and that's important. So speciogynin and penanthine, yeah, sorry, I'm not the chemist, but we know that there are some alkaloids that act on serotonin receptors. And a lot of people Google Kratom and they get opioid that pops up at them. And that really, really irritates me. I do not like the internet when that happens because Kratom is not an opioid. And there's opioid activity, but there's so much else going on with this botanical. And I do think, what we are following up on is assessing the serotonergic excess possibility at Hopkins now. It is something that we do think everyone should be aware of. It's not a danger at this point, but it's something that needs further investigation. And I should note that when people did describe having unpleasant events with Kratom, none of them sought medical attention. So that's probably a reason why we don't have more published case reports, because a lot of people are not seeking medical care. Last slide, this is a bunch of stuff just shoved onto one slide, and it's what everyone loves. They love the driving simulator. So I wanted to show the driving simulator. We have, this is a machine that is validated to detect impairment with alcohol, cannabis, and we've had people before and after they consume their Kratom get into this driving simulator, and we really did not see any indicator of impairment. We had one participant who had some slight increase in standard deviation of lateral position and a lower coherence score, which is for that one specific task of many, many outcomes. That one participant did show a slight decline. Everyone else, there was no trend in any direction. Some people improved and some people stayed kind of steady. So again, we do need to follow up on this, particularly with Kratom naive consumers and higher potency products, because a Kratom naive consumer could have a different outcome. And I really hope this is the last slide. It is. So takeaways is that Kratom still a harm reduction tool, but really increasingly used for recreation, fitness, quality of life, wanting to feel good, wanting to have energy. The abuse potential remains unknown. We know that physical dependence is part of daily Kratom use, but it seems to be well managed. And really, I do think, I've kind of hit all of these notes, so I'm just going to end with this. We need more investment in scientific research. We really need FDA, we need NIDA, we need more investment in research while regulation plays out, because I don't think we believe Kratom should be prohibited. I'm not coming again at this as a pharmaceutical, but more as a product. And in my opinion, this should be in the marketplace, but it needs to be regulated. It needs to have more investment in research. And with that, I will hand the clicker to Dr. Boyer.
Next, we'll hear from Dr. Boyer.
Thank you very much. My name is Edward Boyer. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. Couple things to get out of the way. I'm an emergency physician. I'm a medical toxicologist. I don't have any conflict of interest other than giving expert witness testimony in Kratom-related matters, even to the point that I haven't accepted compensation from the American Kratom Association or any other trade organization. And that kind of makes sense if you think about it, because Chris has talked about the basic science of why these molecules work the way they do, and Kirsten has talked about why people use them in the way they do and the effects that they have. But I'm a medical toxicologist. I deal with poisonings, overdoses, adverse drug events, and drug interactions. And no pharmaceutical company in the world, no dietary supplement manufacturer, no food manufacturer ever wants to test their substances for poisoning. So, whereas they have the great advantage of being a scientist, I'm more like I'm slightly different, because they can recruit people and do controlled trials. The people who come to me have to have an event, and then somebody has to recognize that the event has occurred and then make a connection with the substance, and then they'll perhaps call me. So a lot of the toxicity that's reported related to Kratom is just purely by happenstance. And whenever you see happenstance, you have to think in terms of biases that occur. So I'm going to focus, we've talked about, like the science, we've talked about the benefits, and I'm going to talk about the risks at this point. So when I think about the risks associated with kratom use, it falls down for me in two primary areas. The first is going to be seizures, and the second is going to be respiratory depression. So for seizures, to give you a little bit of context, this was many years ago, and Chris was involved in this case too. It was somebody who was injecting an awful lot of Dilaudid. His wife told him to stop using drugs. He said, give me a couple of days. He learned about kratom. This was back in 2004 or so many years ago at this point. He began using kratom 3 to 4 times a day. He did this for 3 years, and he noticed that he's more alert. He's paying more attention to his wife. He's getting work done. Now, you could say it's because he's not injecting full-bore opioids several times a day, or you could say it's related to the kratom. We can't say that one way or the other, but regardless, he notices that he's now paying attention to his wife, and he decides to see if he can boost his level of alertness a little bit more. So being a junior pharmacologist, he takes a modafinil tablet because that's something you use to increase your alertness. Didn't want to overdo it. He cut it in 2. He took half the tablet and drank a cup of kratom tea the way he normally makes it in the dose that he normally used, and suffered a generalized tonic-clonic seizure, which brought him to care at Massachusetts General Hospital, where they had never heard of kratom before. So we got called as toxicologists. We went over, and after the evaluation, we found that literally all he had taken was modafinil. We were able to prove that what he'd taken was kratom. We wrote this up as a case report as a potential adverse event related to kratom, but you have to classify it in that exact vein. It's a potential adverse event associated with kratom use. It doesn't prove causation. It doesn't prove that kratom caused the seizure. But a couple of things pop out that are really useful to keep in mind about the seizure and kratom world. The first thing is that, do people suffer seizures after using kratom? Yeah, they do. On the other hand, do people suffer seizures after doing literally almost anything? Yeah, they do. So, we don't know how strong the evidence is just based on that. So we have seizures associated with kratom, but now you have to look a little bit deeper at whether or not they've had a seizure disorder. A lot of individuals who use kratom who've had seizures have a known seizure disorder. So it's not entirely surprising that they're going to seize again. You want to look at the medications or other substances that people have used, and the majority, I'm not going to get into numbers about the proportion that will have done this, but the majority seem to have used multiple substances. How those drugs interact is an area that must be investigated if we had enough patients that we could actually look and figure out if there's a pharmacodynamic interaction between those two substances in that individual. So if you look at the substances, you need to look at whether or not they are pro-convulsant substances. Do the other things that they've taken with kratom actually cause seizures themselves? And in a decent proportion of individuals, certainly in Malaysia, yes, they do cause seizures. So is it correct to say that kratom caused seizures in somebody who has a seizure disorder or used another substance known to cause seizures with kratom? It's probably not correct from a scientific perspective. But what about those individuals who don't use another substance, who have no risk factors for seizures, who have no other substances that they've used? What about those folks? Well, if you take those individuals, and this is a research study that has been performed with a small number of individuals. Take those individuals with no risk factors, no history of seizures, no concomitant drug use, and do an EEG. That's where you put a whole bunch of leads on their head to determine if they have abnormal electrical activity in their brain that can predispose them to seizures. The answer is yes, they do. So they did not seize up to that point, even though they're at increased risk of doing so because their brain has that electrical activity at baseline. So can we say that kratom causes seizures? I think the answer is clearly, no, you can't say that there's causation there, although there is an association. Does somebody who have seizures following kratom use need an additional workup? And I think the answer there is yes. I mean, we know from the cocaine experience, there were an awful lot of people out there in the 1980s, 1990s using cocaine. There were some that would seize from time to time, but the number of people who used cocaine was vastly larger than the number of people who developed a seizure. So a lot of toxicologists say that if you use cocaine and you had a seizure, you need to work up for a primary seizure disorder. I think it's probably a rational recommendation for kratom as well. If you seize without any risk factors, without any concomitant drug use, without a proconvulsant medication, you need to work up for primary seizure disorder. I'm going to pivot a little bit now and talk a bit about respiratory depression. And what Chris didn't tell you, and what I don't think anybody's told you yet, is I'm actually a chemist. I'm a synthetic organic chemist, and then I went off and did other things following. And a lot of my work was in the shape of molecules. If I make a model of a classic opioid, like I take morphine or heroin or hydromorphone or codeine and make a molecule of it, it's kind of a T-shaped molecule. And that binds into the mu-opioid receptor, MOR. Those molecules produce a lot of biological effects. They produce euphoria, they produce analgesia, they produce pupillary constriction. They have effect on mood related to euphoria. They alter gastrointestinal transit time. So there's a lot of biological effects that they mediate. So it's a T-shaped molecule that goes into a receptor that causes a lot of outcomes. Mitragynine is different. Mitragynine is flat. It cannot fold into a T-shaped conformation. So it binds into the mu-opioid receptor or interacts with the mu-opioid receptor in a fundamentally different way. Now, how can you take a T-shaped molecule and have all these effects? Well, they're massive molecules, they transmit across, but because they're massive molecules, they're always changing shape. And if you bind in a particular way, then you stabilize the shape of the molecule that produces pupillary constriction and respiratory depression and analgesia and GI gastrointestinal transit time. So you stabilize the receptors that produce all of those things. You take a flat molecule and put it in there, and it doesn't do it. It doesn't do all of them. It only does some of them. And even the ones that it doesn't do perfectly, not nearly as well as the native molecule. So the classic mu-opioid receptor ligands, the morphines, the heroines, the dilaudid, the oxycodones, the oxycontins, the hydrocodones, they have that T-shaped structure. They produce the universe of adverse events that we expect from opioids. They're called unbiased ligands. They have no bias towards one particular biological activity or another. Mitragynine, being a flat molecule, stabilizes only a couple, and then not very well. It's considered, and it's actually called in the literature, a biased mu-opioid receptor ligand, because it doesn't cause some of the things that the classical ones do. It does not seem to produce respiratory depression to the same degree. Now, can I knock that out? Perhaps I can. Perhaps if I give enough, I can stabilize all the universe of conformations, produce the universe of biological activity, but I don't know the dose at which I can do that. I don't know the other drugs that I can take that will do that. So to say that kratom and mitragynine induce respiratory depression, I don't know that there's a whole lot of strong evidence for that. In fact, there's actually kind of some evidence the opposite direction. Like we know, back from the 1960s, that if you took a rat and drew up a whole bunch of mitragynine in a solution and injected 600 milligrams of mitragynine per kilogram of rat, they would have no respiratory depression whatsoever. So there's testing, there's animal testing that suggests strongly that there's no respiratory depression. And what's more, there are also pharmaceutical products that are not in common use, but nonetheless have been patented, they have IP protection, and they are FDA approved, which are biased ligands. So the big pharma recognizes that biased ligands are a potential way to go too, in terms of creating new molecules. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. That's where, for me, the rubber hits the road with kratom use. And I would look forward, when all were done, to take any questions related to it. So thank you very much for your time, and again, for the opportunity to address you.
We will conclude this scientific panel with Dr. Jack Henningfield, but please also remember that while she couldn't be here today, Dr. Nora Volko, the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, has submitted written testimony. Dr.
Thank you.
Henningfield.
Can you folks hear me okay? Great. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Every time I have an opportunity to participate in an event in the Capitol, I take a walk around the Capitol when I'm done and just marvel at the fact that we can actually do this and have input and interact with people like Representative Bergman and Pocan, who help make this happen. Dr. Volkal isn't here, but you've heard a lot of the research that is being done because Congress funded NIDA to do this research. It comes together. It's great to be the last one, because part of my mantra is, how do we get FDA in the game? You heard from Drs. McCurdy and Smith, the diversity of products in the marketplace. And well, what do you do about that? FDA is the best organization in the world, hands down, to figure out what should the standards be? What should the labeling be? Over-labeling is as bad as under-labeling. Should products say caution causes seizures? I'll bet FDA would conclude no. You don't put a label on just because something might do something. That's dangerous. Anyway, that being said, next, let me see, hopefully this will work. If it doesn't, I'm going to ask you folks to do it. Disclosures, I consult in this area. I've been working in addiction research since 1971 in neuropharmacology, and working on drug regulation since that was part of my job in 1980 at NIDA, working with FDA and DEA. And I still work with FDA and DEA, and I respect what they do. And we don't always agree, but they're all trying to do what we're trying to do, get it right. Just in a couple of things that I'm going to mention, a little bit of the history that you've already heard. A lot of what, and a lot of the history that FDA ignored. When people ask me, how did FDA get it wrong? My answer is, well, they came to the table late, about 2011, 12, and they didn't consult with NIDA researchers, and they didn't consult with Southeast Asian researchers who'd been studying it for decades. There's a lot of promising developments, and that includes findings now. The science base is incredible. And you just heard from some of the pioneers in science in this area in the United States, and they stand on other pioneers. Dr. Smith, it's amazing. She's become a pioneer in just a few years. She's a NOVA pioneer. And congressional encouragement of FDA is happening. And that's encouraging, because a lot of times FDA needs encouragement from the United States Congress to say, why don't you do this? Give us cover, et cetera. Let me go back with just a couple of things about some of the history. Well, guess what? In 1972, SmithKline and French allowed their scientists to publish the results of their exploration of mitragynine as a new pain drug. And you already heard a lot of what they found back in late 60s, 1970s. I think they were allowed to publish it because, for whatever reason, maybe patent reasons, the company decided not to go forward. But you can see what their conclusions were. that in our search for a potent yet safe analgesic possessing a profile of qualities that are better, superior than existing agent, mitragynine looks like it's the real deal. It produces some pain effects, low respiratory depression, safe profile. It's not an opioid. Somehow FDA missed that when they said it's a deadly addictive narcotic like opioid. As a kind of an epilogue, how the world would have been different maybe in pain management if they had gone forward with it, but they didn't. By the way, that's their summary. Anybody that wants my slides, they're publicly available and I'll send them to you. I tell you what, can you just click? I'll just say click because this is not reliable. As Congressman stated earlier, with FDA, we've got to work with FDA. So about 4 or 5 years ago, Mac Haddow said, what study would make a difference? I said, even though we know kratom doesn't cause respiratory depression like an opioid, we need to do FDA's test. Can you get the funding? And some of you folks in the room may have contributed the funding. I don't know who. I said, the deal is we're going to show the data to FDA and NIDA before you see it, and we're going to publish it no matter what the results are. We did that. And the curve with the blue is flat as a pancake. That's respiratory effects under a huge range of doses. And the green is the oxycodone control, and that produced the Death Valley effects on respiration and deaths in some of the animals. Next slide, please. This was a historic study that both Chris and Ed already mentioned. You know, science, a lot of it is we just by accident and fortuitous events. So Dr. Boyer has somebody coming saying, hey, what's going on with this guy? And Dr. Boyer calls Chris McCurdy. So here he had lead kratom researcher and a lead toxicologist, an opioid guy that really knows pain and opioids. And looking at this, and look at their conclusion. We report self-treatment of chronic pain and opioid withdrawal with kratom. The predominant alkaloid kratom mitragynine binds immunocappa opioid receptors, but has additional receptor affinities that might augment its effectiveness. FDA got it wrong. It wasn't just a morphine opioid-like receptor. It's a diverse substance, and that probably accounts for a lot of the benefits. It's not a powerful analgesic. It does have analgesic effects, but it does a lot of other things that are important. Science, I love. Next slide, please. 2018, the FDA was stopped in its tracks by science. Now, that wouldn't have happened without advocacy and consumers, but it was science. After the FDA bombshell with the commissioner himself saying this is a deadly addictive narcotic like opioid, what did NIDA do? Ramped up its research. NIDA and DEA were actually closer aligned than FDA at that time. And we see Dr. McCurdy and others were already researching, but a lot more money came in. And I would say that is a success story in funding NIH and giving researchers that are creative and dedicated, like Dr. McCurdy and others, who then run with it and give us what we need for regulation. A lot we don't know, but anybody that says we don't know enough to start regulating doesn't know anything about regulation. There's plenty for FDA to start. Whether you're regulating water, food, drugs, you start with what you got and you start regulating, and regulations evolve as you learn more. We got a lot of information. Scientist letter to White House. We wondered, would anybody read that? And that made the case that if you ban kratom, people are going to die because people's lives depend on it in some cases. Secretary Jor turned to his chief of staff and says, FDA is probably right, but these seem to be credible scientists. Let's look at it. What did he do? After their investigation, they found the same things. They investigated independently. And Actually, later, Dr. Jor, in a tweet to Dr. Gottlieb, said FDA's recommendation was rejected because of embarrassingly poor evidence and data and a failure to consider overall public health. If kratom's fueling the opioid epidemic, prove it. He knew it wasn't. Then in June, NIDA and College on Problems of Drug Dependence all agreed this is an important area in public health and science. In that single meeting, Dr. McCurdy had really a historic symposium in Kratom because he brought together a lot of the lead researchers. 5 FDA people were there. I know because they were sitting right behind me. Dr. Smith gave and she was a baby at the time, 13 years old. She was giving one of the hot topics presentations, which are very well attended, on people with heroin addiction using kratom to stay off. NIDA brought in the Malaysian experts and had an international kratom panel. Here's the people who were saying, hey, kratom is an instrumental substance. And all of these sessions were attended by FDA, NIDA, and DEA. That was a very important point in stopping FDA's progress. Now I'm going to bring next slide, a little pain to the audience. You've heard a lot about pain. 2 weeks ago, I believe the first in history kratom presentation at the annual Pain Week convention occurred. And Dr. Rafa and myself co-chaired it. And when the audience was there, we had one of the larger audiences. I said, how many of you are treating patients with kratom or using kratom, your patients? More than 1/3 of the hands went up. So why are you here? We want to learn more. They want information from FDA, they're not getting it. But why is kratom so helpful in pain? And again, there's no pain product. Kratom is not approved for pain or any other indications. That's important to recognize. Next slide. However, pain, self-reported pain, is a major reason that people report for use. And what's really interesting is that people report that I got my life back. I made things better. What's going on, especially since it's not a powerful analgesic, but it does have analgesic effects that meet all of the tests in the drug company studies and others. Well, it has a lot of effects that go along with chronic pain. Next slide. And this is from a paper I presented at a psychedelic conference. We're learning that psychedelics like MDMA help a lot of people with chronic pain. What's going on there? They do not have analgesic effects. Well, chronic pain is a multimodal problem. It includes psychological components, and multimodal treatment works better. And the pioneers in a lot of this were the US military. In the 1990s, discovered that soldiers with blown off limbs did better if you gave them counseling, divorce counseling. What's that got to do with pain? Psychological counseling. But the people that got counseling, multimodal treatment, maybe antidepressants, they did better with pain, recovery, getting their lives back, and they needed less opioids and got off of opioids sooner. Well, as you already heard from Drs. Boyer, McCurdy, Smith, kratom isn't just an opioid. It has some opioid effects, but it has effects, emotional effects, mood-altering effects that are beneficial. And a lot of those are why people use it. And when I was first exploring kratom more than 10 years ago, I thought, what's going on? People are using it for fibromyalgia, post-traumatic stress. Well, fibro is, that's pain, sleep, and depression. It does all of that. Next slide, please. So the Lancet, and there's a revolution in pain treatment right now. And the revolution is a reset, that we have to treat chronic pain, focusing more on the emotional and physical problems, helping people get their lives back, not giving up on relieving pain, but doing all of this. And kratom looks like in one plant, you get a lot of these effects, plus a bonus. And what's the bonus? What pain medicine actually increases alertness, mental acuity, and helps you get your job done better? Next slide, please. Okay. Has anyone heard that we might have the first downturn in drug overdose deaths? A really hot topic. Nora Volkow weighed in on it in the last couple of days. Everybody's saying, what's going on? Well, is it real? Yes, but it's complicated. And guess what? It's not happening with stimulants and cocaine. They're flat or actually still going up a little bit. But opioid deaths are going down, and that was real. Will it continue? Nora Volkow is saying we need more harm reduction. We need more naloxone. She didn't mention kratom, but I think this makes it more important than ever. We know that there are some people whose lives dangle by the thread of kratom. We don't know how many. And kratom hasn't been mentioned in these discussions. But more than ever, we need FDA to step in and regulate and not demonize it. Don't scare people away what could be life-saving. And why is that so important? It's always important, but whenever there is an addiction going on, it's really important. You might have heard the old mantra in addiction treatment about denial. It's not a river in Africa. It's part of the addiction process. And people oftentimes love to hear that the treatment is bad so they can stay on what they're taking. We need honest, accurate information out there. And kratom, we think, is part of that solution. How big of a part? FDA, we have to get you at the table helping. And next slide, please. I showed this slide. Some of you might have seen it. I presented at an FDA hearing about in 2018 on new treatments for opioid dependence, because that's when FDA was saying, well, it's not approved, so people should stop using it. And I presented this slide, and if I heard later that NIDA colleagues liked it, and some of the people at FDA did not like it. I said, you don't take the life preserver away from somebody struggling in the ocean because it's not Coast Guard approved. Okay, last slide. Sustaining and accelerating, second last. The decline of overdose deaths. How many of you recognize that guy before you saw it? Mac Haddow worked for him. I was assigned to work from him 1981 and basically until he died. He was a harm reduction guy. Dr. Koop understands that much of public health is harm reduction. Clean needles, less harmful substances. If he said about nicotine, if you got to be hooked on nicotine, be hooked on a product that's less likely to kill you. This is very much what public health is about. But we need, and kratom also has the potential to help with alcohol and stimulant use disorders. That's part of NIDA's interest in it. But what do we need to do that might need more congressional support? Ensure that kratom remains accessible nationally. Kratom Consumer Protection Act. More states, and ideally we need it federally. Everybody should be protected, not just some people. FDA and others decry kratom for not going through FDA or having a new dietary ingredient notification. But FDA is denying all of those. And guess what? That process, if they do it, they learn a lot, because then for that product, they have to decide what are the standards, what are the relative ratios of substances that Dr. McCurdy told you are evolving, what is an acceptable kratom product. And then the industry knows what they can market, and they can make sure the legitimate players, we meet that profile. And if you don't meet that profile, you're not going to be on the market. Industry can't do that. You need FDA to do that. So there are a lot of things that we need Congress maybe to nudge, and I say encourage FDA, which you know better than any way, Representative, that letters, hearings, meetings. And recently, Representative Bergman and Correa, who had the bipartisan psychedelic caucus, issued a request for information to help FDA move forward more quickly on psychedelic medicines development. And they did that after the disastrous hearing with MDMA in June. I think that will get approved, but it's going to take longer, and they're helping move the process along. So last slide, conclusions and pleas, and I think most of this has been covered. But first, with support of research to NIH, this is an amazing success story. In just the last 10 years, the research publications have skyrocketed. I mean, when I watch Chris present, I mean, what we know now, remember 5 years ago, he said, well, major constituent of kratom is 7-hydroxy. Well, now we know, no, it's a metabolite. It's actually in very low levels. And if it's high levels, it's probably been spiked. And we know a heck of a lot more. Although the overdose epidemic might be subsiding, we hope it'll continue. We need kratom in the game and legitimized, not demonized. Don't demonize what can be helping. NIDA has walked that path very carefully. It says kratom is not approved as safe and effective, but a lot of people are using it. Nowhere do they say don't use it. And DEA, that's part of the reason DEA opposed NIDA and walked away from trying to schedule it. Thank goodness for Dr. Jor for stepping in. Kratom's an underemployed health asset. How do we leverage it more? Balanced FDA oversight can protect and guide those for whom kratom is their lifeline, and provide standards for industry. Legitimate industry in just about anywhere wants to know what the rules are and what should the label be. FDA can do that better than anyone. Also, I would love to see what's happening in the psychedelic area from Congress, which is the Department of Defense and Veterans Administration have gotten in the game. And DOD in the last budget defense authorization bill said DOD shall start testing active duty people with post-traumatic stress with psychedelics. That will help move the ball forward. We need DOD and Veterans Administration at the table with kratom. There's more than 50,000 suicides per year in the United States, more than 15,000 of veterans and active duty alone, a lot of them related to depression and post-traumatic stress disorder that kratom helps some people with. So we need them at the table. Anyway, I really appreciate, I'm grateful for all of you here who are helping in this area. Really grateful for people in Congress that have stepped up to the table and are helping. And frankly, there's plenty of people at FDA that are ready to rock and roll in this area, but I think they do need some congressional encouragement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, our panel of scientists, and we'd like to move quickly to the next panel, which is a group of kratom advocates. And in the interest of time, we only have this room until 11:30. Just like to ask the.
All right, we're going to stop here for a moment to talk. Y'all are all muted. Are y'all unmuted now? Okay, good.
There you go.
Wow, we're going to watch the other part, y'all, but we wanted to come break in and talk for a bit. And look how long it took us to watch this. We've been live for an hour and a half, over an hour and a half. Sorry, Mr.
I'm fine with that. I was over here nerding out, taking
I know, right?
Y'all, I wrote like 2 pages of I was jotting down some good quotes and stuff. Oh, man. Wow.
Jim McCurdy killed it.
Yeah,
they all
Yeah.
did.
Well,
watching
and
that, I
Every-
Dr. Smith, and everybody did.
Every one
I
of
went-
them crushed it.
I went and clipped that part where he was talking about how the medical examiners can't
Yeah.
differentiate between mitragynine
Right.
and 7-OH.
Right. I mean, we have
So-
all just been armed with so much information,
Yeah.
from the
You know,
researchers.
and that right there kind of confirms what I've been feeling, that since the uptick of these kratom deaths, to 2023 and up till now, I can't help but to think, did they receive that free sample from their fucking vendor?
Yep.
Right.
Did they go to the smoke shop? Because these smoke shops are saying, hey, no, the leaf is no good. Try this,
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, that's a huge
Yeah.
thing to find out.
huge.
The fact that they can't differentiate
Yes.
between the two and they call it all kratom,
Yeah.
Yep.
man, that's a freaking
It's not right.
game changer.
So basically, he's saying if something happens with somebody on 7-OH, they're just going to say kratom because they can't
Yeah.
test technically that, it was just the 7-OH product.
And what else is in those tablets? What
Right.
what filler? What is in there?
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. Unknown.
Yeah. That was very
Right.
eye-opening. Very well. I loved what McCurdy was quoted as saying 7-OH. That is not. He said, "This is not kratom."
Yep.
What
It's
can
not
we
kratom.
do to have that being seen by these vendors that put 7-OH kratom on their products?
Mhm.
Like, I mentioned to y'all, I think it was Thursday in the Kratom Real Talk chat on Twitter, that somebody had just, posted in the Kratom Real Talk community and had mentioned, their powdered capsules and why didn't it work nearly as well as a 7-OH tablet somebody in the smoke shop sold them. And when I looked up the packaging, like the guy said the name of the place, I looked it up online. The product says 7-OH, but it also says kratom leaf.
Yeah.
They should not be allowed to have the word kratom anywhere on packaging.
They're going to do it as long as they can possibly profit from it.
Yeah, which is really sad.
Right.
It's almost like,
And then if there's a problem, they'll take kratom off and they'll just leave the 7-OH on there.
but it's
Yeah.
still even dangerous. It's dangerous. It's like comparing prescription grade fentanyl to illicit fentanyl.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and McCarty had even made the comment about, like what beer to grain alcohol,
Yeah.
which, we hear it shown that, talked about that way. I mention that all the time with people. Like, it's like comparing a light, whole leaf powder and extracts and 7-OH is like comparing a light beer to Everclear.
Yeah. Bacardi
know?
151.
Yeah.
Oh God, these
But there was
freaking greedy
so
vendors.
much great information. I loved when Dr. Kirsten Smith was talking about how, how so widely talked about and known, like, the low dose is more energizing, the high dose is more sedating. And she said that the research actually does not support that. What y'all think
Yeah.
of that? Because we have never heard that before.
I mean, I can't, like I say, I only dose 1 teaspoon once a day. I can't, for me, like I said, there's no addiction potential for me. And this is coming from a recovered addict. So
Yeah.
I can't even make myself to even want to dose higher than what I'm dosing right
Yeah.
now. I
Same.
did that before. I used to dose 5 teaspoons 5 times a day,
Yeah.
Did it
And
sedate you?
there-
Did it
there's-
sedate?
I did in the beginning
No.
too, but no, it did not.
It
It
did
I've
not
not
never
sedate
been
me.
I've never been sedated with kratom, and I can't take more than 2 teaspoons in a dose. It makes me feel crappy, and then I don't get the pain relief. Like, it just
Yeah.
stops working. And I'm like, but everybody talks about this sedating feeling, this relaxation at a higher dose. I'm like, well, I'm already taking about 5 grams. Like, that's kind of considered medium to high, right?
Yeah.
It's like I was just overloading my body with extra plant material because
Right.
somehow, during that 5 teaspoons 5 times a day,
Right.
I had already hit that ceiling effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything after
Exactly.
that was just overloading my body.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
where's
know.
that sedating effect? So I thought it was really interesting when she said that. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, where's the kratom nods?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I tried to do the whole not, like when you take too many pain
Yeah.
pills and you nod
Yeah.
out. Never happened. I did puke though.
I did too. More than once.
I've
Right,
never
more than
puked from
God.
I've never puked from kratom.
Yeah. I learned the
I've got
hard way. Oh,
nauseous. I've got nauseous, especially with capsules. Ugh. But
It's a
or
different kind of
nauseous
puke.
from drinking, tasting the kratom. That first time I took it, the powder, and I mixed it up, add some orange juice, I literally thought I was going to throw up from the taste. I was like, ew, this is so gross. But I'm like, okay, wait a minute. But I'm kind of feeling something. And then once I had it all figured out, I'm like, to me, it's worth the bad taste for the relief. But there are people,
Right.
so many people online I've met, and I'm wondering if y'all have run into this, that say, I don't care if it gives me great relief. It tastes so bad, I'm not going to, I can see that it helps me, but it's like, oh my God, you can't get over the bad. Put stuff in it. I mean, people get really creative making drinks and
Right.
stuff, or do the Blade Papes. Do something.
Look, I say this all the time. We swallow worse things. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
And it's always like the
on.
people
Yeah.
that are like drinking, Everclear just by itself. You know what I'm saying? It's always somebody that,
Yeah.
it drinks unimaginable things. It's like, dude, it's not that bad. Like, it's not that bad.
It's not really that bad. It's not. The other thing that was interesting was that Dr. Boyer, the ER physician, where did he come from? I don't think I've ever heard him speak before. Have y'all?
haven't.
I ain't never seen him.
He was
It's
in,
the first time.
He's
He
a
was in-
toxicologist, right?
yeah, he was in, and Dr. Heidi had posted earlier in the chat about, let me go find that comment. Because she
Because I
said
want to
that,
say that, the seizure stuff that he was talking about, because we see that a lot advocating.
Yeah,
We see people
yeah.
saying that it caused them to have seizures. Now, for me,
Yeah.
my epilepsy or generalized seizure disorder, or what have you, because the doctors, the neurologists can never find out how or why I started having seizures. Now, in
right.
hindsight, it was because I was, when I think about it, what all led up to it, I was abusing the pills. My brain
Yeah.
didn't know. I was frying my brain. My brain didn't know which was up, down, sideways, left, right, So I was, and so the neurologist came to the conclusion that my seizures were stress induced.
Mhm.
So, but this whole 5 years that I've been consuming kratom, I haven't had a seizure. But I still, Keppra is the only medication that I continue to take from Big Pharma. So I don't
Yeah.
know if it's because Keppra is still helping me, or
Yeah.
I'm not abusing kratom. I'm not. My brain isn't all Twitter fucked.
Well, and it also goes
Right.
back to the whole, there's so many factors that go into
Yeah.
something. Like, just because they had a seizure after they started, say they've been taking kratom for 3 years and they have a seizure, that doesn't necessarily mean it was the kratom. It could have been an underlying condition they didn't know anything about. I mean, it could
Right.
be a lot of things, so it's all like the first thing should not be to blame kratom. It should be to start eliminating other,
And we
things.
see that.
That's
Yeah,
what Dr.
all the
Boyer
time.
said. That's what Dr. Boyer was saying. Like, it doesn't cause seizures. It can be associated with seizures,
Yeah.
but it seems like people are so quick to judge kratom
Mhm.
because they're new to it, and any little thing that happens, oh, it's kratom's fault.
Yeah,
And-
or even if they've
and
been taking
my-
it for a while. Like, I've seen
Yeah.
people say, "Yeah, I took it for 3 years and I started having seizures." But it's like,
Yeah.
they didn't go to the doctor, nothing like that. It just they self-diagnosed it as that, and it's like,
And these
I don't know.
kratom deaths, like some of these kratom deaths are the mom saying that their kids suffered from a seizure and they died from the seizure.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, right.
Right.
So
But it's like,
I don't know.
and it gets labeled as a kratom death
Right.
instead of looking to find out what was actually the issue.
Now, one time I did have a seizure almost
Yeah.
exactly 30 minutes from the time I took one tramadol. I remember that seizure. The other seizures were when I was, I'd use my pain pills and I'd run out like 10 to 14 days. It would be during that detox phase that I was having my seizures.
Yeah.
But
I
at the
bet.
time when they started happening in 2008, which was when I slid into the addiction side, I wasn't putting that together, So, I don't know.
Yeah. And Dr. Henningfield, wow. He was awesome, as always. I loved when we were in DC last December, Misty, and just being in the room with all of them
Yeah.
is very surreal. When he said flat out, if you ban kratom, people are going to die. We know that.
Yeah.
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 We know that will happen.
Yeah.
And for those of us, that come from pain management, that live with debilitating chronic pain, like, that's going to like really affect us.
Yeah. That's what I cannot stand the people that sit there and say to ban it when there's so many of us out there that depend, I mean, just to live a functional life,
Yeah.
just to do normal everyday things, and they just want to take that away from us and make us a criminal. Like, that's
Yeah.
stupid. That's selfish. It's petty, and it's
Very.
always for the wrong reasons every
Yeah.
time.
Exactly.
Lawsuits.
What are your thoughts, Venus?
And I hate how they call our stories anecdotal
Yeah.
evidence
Yeah.
Yeah.
when there are true stories.
And
Right.
I always say that
We
too.
live it.
I'm like, how come these, deaths, how come, or people that are addicted to kratom, how come those stories aren't anecdotal?
Exactly.
But yet our positive
Right.
testimonies
Yeah.
are.
Right. Good point.
Good
Very
point.
good point. And what about when Dr.
Exactly.
Henningfield was talking about that thing with the pain management? Was it pain management doctors that he was talking about, right? And that like a third of them like raised their hand and wanted to like learn more about kratom, and that they do talk about it with patients. Is that what he said?
Something like that.
Something where
to the
they're
effect
asking
of-
like, or
Yeah.
who was familiar with, what was it he said? Something like, it was like a third of the hands like sound like they were familiar with kratom, but then he said that they wanted to learn more about it.
Yep. How come 3/4 didn't
Awesome.
raise their hand?
Yeah,
Exactly.
Right.
Because they don't care.
because they've been given the propaganda
Yeah.
and they don't care.
FDA.
Exactly.
The
Yep.
FDA. It all
Yeah.
it all points to the FDA.
I want that single dose study to come out so the FDA, so then we can tell everybody
Yes.
to shut up, because
It's like
we can
everybody's
finally
talking about
say,
it. The cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows what was said, FDA. Come on, man.
but it's
Stop
not official
playing.
Just
yet.
publish it.
We need it
Yeah.
official. Yes, we need it published, and the FDA is going to have to change their website when that comes out.
Yeah.
When it's
That's why the
published.
federal KCPA has been introduced. It's to force the FDA's hand.
Yeah.
That's part of the language in it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to watch the rest of that video. Now what we have left is 30 minutes, and is having the advocates come on and talk, including Dr. Heidi Sakura, who's in the comments here today with us. And yeah, are y'all ready to go watch that now?
Let's go.
Let's do this. Let's
Let's
stomp
do
it.
Do y'all want to stay on screen for that, or do you want me to
Already.
take us all off? Oh,
Off.
Venus, are you on a delay? I was wondering if she's on a delay.
Yeah. I
Oh
think
shit, she
is.
is.
Yeah, I'll be back.
Okay. I've noticed you've been delayed every time you respond. Okay.
I always have flashbacks to Venus. 1, 2, 3. Every time.
When we
Every
tried to
time.
record when we tried to record the episode of Kratom Stories podcast, the one that came out last week, where it literally took us, because of technical issues that Venus had, it literally took us 2 hours just to start recording the episode, and then like an hour to get through the episode. But yeah, we just couldn't.
Madalyn, the FDA is watching.
Is that going to be your new thing?
If you guys haven't seen that video on my TikTok or on my Facebook, you gotta watch
You
it.
want me to play it?
It's
You
hilarious.
want me to play it real quick?
Yeah.
On your you have it on your YouTube?
Yeah. I think I put it on my YouTube.
Let me go find it real quick. That would be hilarious to show everybody, for anybody that is it a short, or do you have it?
It should be a short.
I might just have to grab it off your TikTok, because I don't. Oh yeah, I think I found it. Oh, you know what? I think with TikTok I can make it more full screen though, because this on YouTube on a short.
It's condensed version.
Yeah. Let me just pull up on here. Venus came back. Hold on, let me add her back on. There we go. Hey. How far down in the feed is it, Misty? You've been
On my
busy. You got
TikTok?
lots of videos on your TikTok lately. Okay. Let me this is gonna be fun. If y'all have not seen this yet, you're gonna get ready to laugh really hard. So let me cue this up on the screen so we can watch it. It's a lot of moving parts for y'all to see this stuff. All right. Y'all be ready to laugh. You'll see why Misty just said what she said. 2 hours later. Oh, man.
It worked perfect when we weren't recording.
This week has been so anti-Kratom Gals.
Oh
know.
man, technology is trying to stop us, y'all.
It really is. It really is.
FDA's watching.
Motherfuckers. Oh my gosh, that's so
Oh my
funny.
God.
That's so
Oh,
funny.
I love it. Like right after that, you're like, they probably have us on watch list.
Yeah. Probably on a watch. I don't doubt it.
Oh, that's so funny. So funny.
I hope you like
Oh,
what you
this-
see, FDA.
that makes me like cry laugh every time. We do a lot of laughing here.
Mhm.
It's always great therapy for everybody.
We do.
All right, so we're gonna finish watching. So do y'all want to stay on the screen on the side while we do that part, or should I just take this all
No,
off?
take us off. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
Stick
And
with
for
the program.
anybody that just got here, we're watching the congressional briefing that happened yesterday on Capitol Hill with the American Kratom Association. We have members of Congress in there. We've got all the leading Kratom researchers that we've been watching. And now it's going to be the advocates that are come up and talk, including Dr. Heidi Sakura, who's here with us in the comments, chatting with us. Really looking forward to hearing her testimony, but all the others that were there. And I know a couple of them were from the documentary A Leaf of Faith that spoke.
Oh.
Yeah.
The people
yeah, the
in
couple with
Vegas or whatever.
the veterans with the little bicycle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's cool.
I
Man,
met
I
them
want
in
to try one of those
Vegas.
bicycles.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that. So, because I haven't watched any of this. This is all like brand new for me. I saw what you're doing, Misty, when the researcher, you're like screenshotting stuff. I was too, because I can, even though we're off the screen, I have like a little tiny box since I'm hosting this of you guys in here, so I can easily pull you back up and stuff. But I was screenshotting.
It was to help me remember where I can go back into the video so that I can
yeah.
post those up.
Yeah, because it was just so much information. And so like things that we can refer people to.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, let's we're gonna go back to watching. I'm gonna take us off the screen, and
So
we're
you saw me over here acting a fool then?
No, I mean everything is tiny. I can barely see
Oh, okay.
anything.
I was acting like a nerdy fool, but you know.
Y'all, at one point I was standing up because I needed to stand for a minute, and like all you saw was like the bottom half of me. But like but it didn't dawn on me like, oh, yeah. When you host StreamYard, you can, because the whole time I can see little boxes of everybody, but it's tiny. I was listening to the information because it was so good. But but this would be a good time
Well,
to
now that I
say.
know you can see me, I might just.
That would be a good time for me to say. like, don't pick your nose or.
I had my camera off because I thought it was
Screen
slowing me down. So you didn't see me acting foolish.
This is like part comedy show sometimes. Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I wasn't picking my nose though, but shit, I did have to go pee a couple times.
I can't see that. Okay. All right. Let's get back to our. I am too.
Shit.
And then once Misty goes, I can't stop. And every time she's like cracking up when we're watching a video, she'll be on the little sidebar just laughing. It like always sets me off, and all of a sudden I'm laughing.
It's contagious, man. Oh, it's so contagious.
And sometimes
like
it's
a
just
yawn.
because of a comment,
It
but then
is,
like the
it
person
is.
talking on screen though is saying something real serious. I'm like, wait a minute, that probably looked bad if somebody didn't realize I'm laughing at the comment that Misty's
Right.
laughing at. That's making me laugh. It's a chain reaction. Okay, let's get back to it. We've already been here for 2 hours and we still got a little ways to go. For those live, if you can't stay, this is recorded, so you can always, watch the rest of this later. We don't think anybody would want to stay on all this time, but we appreciate those that do. All right, so let me bring this back up. I'm going to take us off the screen and we're going to finish watching.
7 or 8 minutes maximum. And thanks again to the scientific panel. Thank you. I would ask the next panelist, grab your little placard and bring it up with you. Thank you for doing that, Heidi. Yeah, that's good. Dedicated to stomping out. Michael, right? Thank you. All right. We'll go ahead and we have 4 panelists. I'll introduce them first and give you their background. We have first Peter and Kelly Guidry, founders of Forgotten Not Gone. Did I pronounce your last name right? Okay. A remarkable veterans organization dedicated to stomping out veterans suicide. Michael Krawitz, Director of Virginians Against Drug Violence and Executive Director of Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access as well. Melody Wolf, a Kratom consumer from Michigan, and Heidi Sikora, Kratom user from Wisconsin. Their personal stories and advocacy efforts reflect the very real positive impact Kratom has had on their lives and the lives of countless others. And without further ado, I'm going to turn to Peter and Kelly. And please remember to push the button in front of you. Yeah. Push it and it'll go red. And please let's limit comments about 7-8 minutes so everybody has a chance to talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Kelly Guidry. I am the founder, co-founder, along with my husband, Peter Guidry of Forgotten Not Gone. I am also an Air Force veteran. Our nonprofit is suicide prevention through veteran peer support outdoor recreation. I would just like to thank you so much for letting me speak. Thank you to Mac. Thank you also to Kelly Dunn as well. And to Jeremy Stedding. They have supported us throughout our career of doing this. The biggest thing I really wanted to point out was a couple of things. The way we were introduced to Kratom was through supplement store. So I've never experienced the gas stations or anything like that. It was always introduced to me as a supplement. My personal story is I was addicted to pain pills and alcohol through the VA. They gave me pain pills, hydrocodone, which is an opiate, for my fibroids. I was in severe pain all the time. And that is a huge issue when you want to come out of addiction, when you want to get into recovery. The biggest thing that scared me the most was chronic pain. I don't think people really understand what it's like to live second to second in pain. So I really wanted to stop using the hydrocodone, but I knew that I would be in pain, so it was very frightening for me. My husband actually started using Kratom before I did because I was, like I said, severely scared of everything. I just celebrated 13 years of sobriety September 17th. So it was really important to me to still find something to help me cope with the pain, but also have a quality of life. And I would have to say that Kratom did exactly that for me. It helped me have a quality of life. And this last 11 years of doing our nonprofit, I would not be able to get up every morning and help my veterans facilitate trauma healing if I did not have it. First, getting over the pain, and then also being able to educate them and share something with them to help them get over it. Just really quick, in 2021, women veteran suicide did go up, also civilian as well. I feel like we're at the precipice of something that's huge. If we don't do something, it's going to get really, really bad. Women typically do not kill themselves, unalive themselves, and they are using firearms, and it is at a high rate. And if we don't step in right now, something it's going to be a lot worse. So I just want to thank you so much again. Kratom has given me my life back. I am not a daily user. I use it when I need it. But having that resource to go to helps me have a quality of life, and I don't know where I would be without it.
And I'm Peter Guidry, the other half of Forgotten Not Gone, and co-founder. It's been an amazing journey the last 11 years, having been medically retired from Nellis Air Force Base back in 2002. Leaving the military, being sick at that time, it led to a lot of severe depression. And it was so bad the first 10 years that, I came to a point that I wanted to take my life. And I wanted to read a statistic real quick. It says that that there's actually 6,300 suicides among veterans, every single year. When we first started 12 years ago, it was 22 veterans were dying a day, but through the advocacy efforts, that numbers went down. We're seeing in maybe about 17 veteran suicides at that point. But the reason why veterans are dying because they're suffering. They're suffering in silence at home. A lot of us are physically sick. We're embarrassed because we used to be functioning at a high level. And now because what happened to us in the military physically, our bodies are broken, so it leads to a broken spirit. And so when I was seeking help at the VA after being medically retired, the medicine that they gave me for my back spasms caused more vomiting blood. I started getting sicker and sicker because of the medicine that was FDA approved that the VA was giving me. And it wasn't until I was able to find Kratom at a local supplement store called Pure Health in Las Vegas that I was able to get a different solution to overcome the physical and the chronic pain that I was dealing with. And so on a day, every time that I ride, usually about 3 outreaches a week that we're doing right now. And we log 22 miles with our recumbent trikes. And so we have anywhere from 10 to 25 veterans out with us. They're from all walks of life, all ages, some 70-year young veterans, Vietnam guys with us. But a lot of those veterans now are finding the ability to participate in the veteran peer support outdoor recreation that we offer because of the aid of taking Kratom. It helps them control the pain a little bit, the inflammation, to be able to get out the house, then work on the mind-body connection. But before I had this as an aid in my personal toolkit, again, the medicine that was FDA approved that the VA gave me was causing so many side effects that I was vomiting blood and I was very sick. And 12 years ago, up to that point, I had been walking on a 4-prong cane. In the last 2 years, I'm no longer walking with a cane, but I'm still having the same physical disabilities, the same pain, the same limitations that I had 20 years ago. But again, my personal Kratom story is, again, it's allowed me to participate at least 3 times a week for the last 10 years, veteran peer support, outdoor recreation. In the last year, I've been on over 100 outreaches with different veterans that were suicidal, that were coming from different homelessness, battling different doom and gloom stories. I was able to participate with hundreds of veterans in the last 12 months, all because I was able to control my pain, because I had a new tool, a new solution over suffering with the Kratom. So I thank you guys for allowing us to be able to tell our personal story of how it helped me as a disabled veteran, not just have to give a doom and gloom story of what's wrong with me, but I've been empowered to be able to overcome my disabilities and have a new purpose in life again. And I'm just filled with joy because it's a dream come true to finally overcome what happened to me 20 years ago in the military, to do something worthwhile in my life. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes, my name is Michael Krawitz. I'm a disabled United States Air Force veteran. I'm a non-paid advocate. I'm a volunteer. I just wanted to read a quick prepared statement. Hopefully it's a shorter statement and open up to questions. As an advocate, I did work inside the VA system for about 10 years, leading up to the point in pain management where we were able to pass a national Veterans Affairs policy on cannabis back in 2010. So I do have some, some experience working as an advocate with individual vets and the system. And I pardon me for my voice. And thank you for inviting me to discuss a pressing issue affecting the health and well-being of millions of our nation's disabled military veterans. As they return from service, many of these brave men and women face a multitude of challenges, including physical injuries, psychological trauma, and chronic pain. While our veterans deserve the utmost care and support, it is an imperative that we explore innovative and compassionate approaches to address their needs. One such approach lies in the growing body of evidence supporting the therapeutic potential of plant-based medicines, such as kratom and cannabis. These natural substances have been used for centuries to alleviate pain, reduce anxiety, and improve overall quality of life. For patients suffering from chronic conditions, these plant-based alternatives may offer a much-needed respite from the conventional pharmaceutical treatments that often come with such significant side effects. The vast majority of disabled veterans are looking to be able to spend more quality time with their family and doing the things that they love to do. They don't want to be heavily medicated. Many veterans have said to me that the VA hospital sent them home with big bags of pills and told them, go home and feel better. Kratom, a tropical tree native to Southeast Asia, has gained attention for its potential to alleviate pain, reduce fatigue, and improve mood. Studies have shown that kratom may be particularly effective for patients suffering from opioid addiction and chronic pain. By providing a natural alternative to highly addictive opioids, kratom might help reduce the prevalence of substance abuse amongst our veterans. Cannabis, another plant with a long history of medicinal use, has also demonstrated promise in treating a variety of conditions, including chronic pain, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. For patients struggling with these debilitating conditions, cannabis may offer a safe and effective means of treatment that promises to lower suicide rates and more effectively treat conditions like pain related to nerve damage. Pain often difficult to treat with opioids alone, even at relatively high doses. This synergistic effects make cannabis an adjunct treatment and explains why many patients can dramatically reduce their pill count of opioids when successfully employing this plant-based medicine. The growing body of evidence suggests that these substances may offer a valuable option for patients seeking relief from their symptoms. Variability in plant-based preparations presents a big challenge to conventional medicine delivery systems that require they live up to their stated intention to deliver individualized care. The voluntary veteran group that I'm part of, Veterans Action Council, a group that I'm proud to be a member of, is working on strategies to affect federal patient access to medicinal cannabis products, for example. These products are now exclusively available under specialized state medicinal access laws. Veterans Action Council hopes that with the imminent rescheduling of Cannabis under Controlled Substances Act, we'll be able to create a national access program that doesn't leave anyone behind. The medical care industry has a critical role to play in ensuring that veterans have access to safe and effective treatments. By integrating plant-based medicines into evidence-based treatment plans, medical care systems can help improve the quality of life for millions of Americans. However, it is essential that policies enable a compassionate and non-punitive approach to these substances. One significant barrier to the use of plant-based medicines is the fear of retribution, such as urine drug testing. Such policies can deter patients from even seeking help and may even exacerbate their symptoms. To address this issue, all medical professionals must implement policies that prioritize patient care over punishment. It is important to keep in mind that it is never ethical for a medical professional to withhold a treatment as a form of retribution or punishment. So in conclusion, disabled United States military veterans and all medical patients deserve access to safe and effective treatments that can help them to live meaningful and fulfilling lives. Plant-based medicines offer a promising alternative for those suffering from chronic pain, anxiety, and other conditions. By integrating these substances into evidence-based treatment plans and adopting a compassionate and non-punitive approach, we can help to ensure that our nation's veterans receive the care they deserve. And by integrating plant-based medicines into our medical treatment plans, we can help keep more of our patients in care, a policy that may help to create more success stories rather than just feeding the drug war more statistics.
Thank you. Next up is Melody Wolf. Melody, could you turn on your mic? Thank you.
My name is Melody Wolf, and I am from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I'm a 10-year daily Kratom consumer, and I'm here to talk to you to try and convince Congress to keep it legal and to reasonably regulate it. I'm one of the people that Dr. Henningfield talked about that have fibromyalgia. I also have spinal stenosis, sciatica, rotator cuff tendinopathy, arthritis, and probably there will be a few more things as I get older, I'm sure, that will come along. And I just wanted to come here today and talk to you about how I just feel it's extremely important, not just for my life, but for all of your lives, because September is Pain Awareness Month, as well as Suicide Prevention Month. There are over 50 million chronic pain patients, and some people say up to 100 million chronic pain patients. So that's a pretty significant portion of the population. And I was reminded of the quote this morning that said, "Best laid plans of mice and men often go awry." Well, we all have our best laid plans, but how often do we end up at our destination? I was just reminded when I was in here this morning that I had dreams of becoming a page when I was in high school. And I wanted to come to these walls of Congress and hearing rooms. I thought, here I am today. So I thought, it's an interesting way that I got here was through Kratom. My pain started when I was about 40 years old. And it just started with, it hurt to hold my husband's hand. And then it continued to get worse and worse and worse. And the conditions continued to lay one on top of another to the point to where I was bedridden, needing a walker and even a wheelchair at times. And I just never thought that this would happen to me. And I don't think most people do think that it's going to happen to them. Because like I was talking about having the best laid plans, I had really good plans. I got my bachelor's degree in international business. I married my childhood sweetheart. I had 3 children. We were involved in our community, involved in our church, and then the pain started. As I said, first of all, holding my husband's hand, and I got so bad to where they sent me to the Cleveland Clinic. And I've also been to the University of Michigan Rheumatology, as well as pain clinics and many, many specialists. At one time, I was put on 11 medications, one of them being the strongest prescription dose of the fentanyl patch. And that is when I think our family started a downward spiral. It made me mean and angry. I was in so much pain anyhow. It helped me tolerate the pain, but for me, it really didn't take it away. So for us, life was pretty dismal. My kids were like 6, 8, and 9 at the time. And they had to have fans on in their bedrooms at night because I would be laying on the couch crying in pain every night. And that is no way for a kid to have to grow up. So anyhow, the effects on our marriage were not, they were probably about just as bad as the effects on our children. We all know how we would hope to react if a spouse has a chronic condition, such as chronic pain, but my husband did not react very well. And then because of me taking fentanyl, I didn't react well to his reaction, and it just continued to spiral. But because of Kratom, August 10th, we renewed our marriage vows with our family. With all of our family and friends present, and it was just so nice to have our kids who went through all of this with us be a part of that. And Kratom continues to have far-reaching effects for my family. In 2022, my daughter lost her childcare, and it was 2 weeks before she went off maternity leave, and she and her husband were like, "What are we going to do?" Well, I got a phone call saying, "Mom, yeah, would you like to move in with us for about 9 or 10 months? I tell you, I did not even have to ask my husband. He said, "Don't you have to talk to Dad?" "No, I'll be there." So it was just shortly afterwards that I moved in with them, and I was able to take care of my new granddaughter. And they live about 5 minutes from the Detroit Zoo. And so I took her that summer about a dozen times to the zoo. And I was able to push her stroller around in the same zoo that my children had to push me around in a wheelchair. And then I was just thinking about all the economic situations now and how high childcare is. They would have had to pay $50,000 for that year for a full-time nanny. And as most young couples do, they would have made it work, but it would have decimated their income and really would have made it hard for them to go on. You know, as families want to build a savings account and get a house. But anyhow, it's my pleasure now to be there for my adult children and to call them my friends. And through the past years, it's been my pleasure to hear them say, "Mom, I'm proud of you." And I just got a message from my daughter before I came up here. It says, "You've got this, Mimi." That's what my granddaughter calls me. And so I was not a mom that they could be proud of. And so now I'm just so thankful to have the chance that I can be. Remember when I said that there are 50 million to 100 million chronic pain patients? That means there's a 1 in 6 chance that everyone in this room will become a chronic pain patient. Certainly, you're going to know someone that has chronic pain. And I want that tool in the toolbox. We need every tool in the toolbox. And I need Kratom to be one of them. Because should you or a family member become a chronic pain patient, be bedridden, using a walker or wheelchair, I want Kratom to be available for you. I want it to be accessible. I don't want to ever lose my mobility again. And that's what losing Kratom would mean to me. And I just wanted it available for all of you and your family members. So let's make sure that we don't plan to fail. I want us to get our plans in order and make sure that we keep Kratom accessible and legal for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And Heidi, you'll be our concluding panelist.
Okay, well, it's such an honor to be here, and I'm so happy to see the veterans organizations here. I do have my own story, but what has really motivated me to get involved in advocacy was seeing the effect on a very close friend who is a veteran. And it was really amazing, the transformation that I saw with Kratom. So as you said, my name is Heidi Sikora. I'm a nurse practitioner and healthcare executive who retired early due to disability. Despite struggling with many health issues in my life, I pushed through work and school, finally earning my doctorate in nursing in 2011. Unfortunately, by 2015, my health issues led to severe pain, an inability to stand longer than a few minutes, fatigue, frequent choking, and gait instability. Finally, after extensive research and many specialist visits, I was diagnosed with several rare congenital disorders. These include Chiari malformation. So that's when the cerebellum, or the lower part of your brain, is beneath the opening of my skull, and it was putting a lot of pressure on my spinal cord, and on my brainstem. It actually flattened part of my brainstem. I also have a tethered spinal cord, and that causes severe pain in my trunk and my legs. Lipedema causes swelling in my legs and my arms. Ehlers-Danlos hypermobility is a connective tissue disorder that makes my joints very unstable and leads to chronic pain as well. And I also have hereditary alpha-tryptosemia. That makes me very drug sensitive and has also led to severe osteoporosis and multiple spinal compression fractures. So for years, I was unable to find a tolerable and effective way to control my pain and fatigue. Even after brain surgery, I could not tolerate the oxycodone. I only took it for a few days. Unfortunately, it made me very dizzy and unstable, and it was a real risk for falls. I am so drug sensitive that even Tylenol makes me sleepy, so I can only take that at bedtime. And of course, the Aleve or NSAIDs, any type of NSAIDs, really led to GI problems. Luckily, my son introduced me to Kratom. I like to say that I gave him his life, but he gave me mine back. Kratom has been a miracle, reducing my pain enough to exercise and stretch, which prevents further debility and injuries from my chronic conditions. Most importantly, it's allowed me to enjoy our 3 grandchildren. Like Melody, you know, being a grandma is the most precious thing in the world, and not being able to play with them or participate in activities would be devastating. Kratom has given me a hope for the future. I am no longer a spectator in life, but a participant. It does not impair my thinking like narcotics, and I've never had side effects like other pharmaceuticals. Regrettably, I only experienced this comfort in Wisconsin, in Illinois, because Kratom is banned in Wisconsin, where I've lived for 31 years. Due to the prohibition of Kratom in Wisconsin, I divide my time between Wisconsin and Illinois weekly. In Illinois, Kratom is legal and provides me with the essential relief from the constant pain I endure. The necessity to travel imposes a significant physical, emotional, and financial burden, as I must maintain residences in both states. My husband's long-standing career in real estate and public service prevent us from moving to Illinois. Yet the legal constraints on Kratom mean we are too often separated, and I really miss him. This is also a hardship for my 91-year-old mother who lives with me and endures the weekly travel between states. I fear that we won't be able to continue this forever. The burden is not just mine, but it's shared with my loved ones as well. God made the natural Kratom plant perfect. I ask you to keep it safe and accessible by passing the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. And I thank you so much for being here.
One of the important takeaways I got from Heidi and Melody is how great it is to be a grandmother. It ain't so bad being a grandfather either. In fact, I like to refer to Wayne Gretzky's quote all the time where he said, grandkids are your reward for not killing your kids. I really appreciate the panelists, the first panel that talked about the scientific aspects of Kratom, and this panel, which talks about the more personal side of how it's impacted their lives or lives of friends or people that you've advocated for. As a former policymaker, I like to call myself a recovering politician. As a former policymaker, it's incredibly important to get the facts. You know, during COVID, we heard over and over and over and over, let's just follow the science. Well, that's all we're asking here today, is to follow the science. In fact, the American Kratom Association was created really with one overarching goal, and that's the most important thing to us, and that is to protect consumer, to protect the consumers and to stand up for the consumers. That's really what we're all about. And in my own state of Arizona, our legislature has passed the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. Several states in the country have done so, but we really need a federal act. There needs to be consistent policy across the country so you don't have to switch and move between Illinois and Wisconsin. And really, all this is about is protecting consumers. We don't like the bad actors that adulterate the product. In fact, our association has reported many of those bad actors who've either adulterated products or made health claims that they're not authorized to make. And we've given those bad actors to the FDA. They haven't done anything with it. And so our goal out of all of this is to make sure that Kratom continues to be safe and legal, but also that the industry is patrolled and we make sure that bad actors are routed out of existence and that the consumers out there have access to clean, unadulterated products. And so for those of you that have listened to these panels today, we appreciate you being here. Please, those of you that are staffers on the Hill, please go back to your bosses and let them know to talk to the co-sponsors of this bill. There's a companion bill in the Senate as well. And please ask them to co-sign. We need this bill to be heard, and we need it to be voted on, and we need good, sound scientific policy coming out of the U.S. Congress, and that's really all we're asking. So that concludes our panels for today. And for the first panel and this panel, could we just get a group picture? We can do a group hug too if you want, but a group picture right up here in front of this dais over here. So thank you and appreciate your support.
Wow.
Heidi, you were amazing. I mean, awesome.
Wow,
Wow.
that was amazing to watch. I love that we all did it together.
I know. I was
Yeah,
like,
me
I
too.
can't wait to watch it with y'all.
Like, I didn't want to watch any of it. I wanted to wait and do it with you guys. Wow.
Same.
If anybody just got here, we've been here for 2 hours and 26 minutes. We just got through watching the entire congressional briefing that happened yesterday on Capitol Hill with the American Kratom Association, members of Congress, leading researchers, and top advocates. And wow, that was lots of stuff to take in.
Hell yeah.
Loved
I
hearing
hope they
from advocates.
listen.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hope they listen.
I think between having those leading researchers and all that we listen to them talk about, between that and then these top advocates sharing what they
Like,
shared, it's got to like hit them, you know?
yeah. It's like, I mean, I can't stand that Heidi has to do that. You know, it's not
I
And
know.
it's not anecdotal anymore. You have,
Go ahead.
but you have the stories and the science together now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Heidi, do you have the group photo?
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
I would love to see a group photo
Yeah.
of that. That'd
Yep.
be cool. But how amazing to, like, you know, they live streamed it, and, you know, there's this recording, we're able to watch it, and like we're a fly on the wall there on Capitol Hill.
Yep.
Very, very cool. I found that to be very impactful.
Yeah, I wish
That's to me.
everybody that could just like every hearing that comes up, ban hearing wise,
Yeah.
they had to sit and listen to that.
Yes.
Like
They
it should be
should.
a requirement.
That
Like
should
don't
be
Google
required.
it, don't, guess, don't say hearsay. Sit down and watch that, and then you can,
Misty, do you know if the AKA ever does, like, when they send all of the paper documents to lawmakers, do you know if they ever, like, also send something like that in itself, or maybe they take that and make like a condensed version with all the top highlights from the researchers, thoughts from the advocates, and package it for them to, I mean, it'd be a heck of a lot easier to watch like a 5-minute video than go through, because, you know, a lot of times when the lawmakers are we're watching these proceedings and they complain about the amount of paperwork the AKA sends.
I know. It's like
you know,
a huge stack, like a
huge
Bible.
binder. It's like, what if that, plus, because we know they're not going to take the time to go through that, also like some kind of video that takes what we just watched but make it condensed into 5 minutes.
Right.
I bet more of these lawmakers would take if they saw those presentations with those researchers, certainly they would be more open-minded.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's included or not in that binder. I don't know.
She doesn't have a
even
group
if
photo.
it was, would they sit and watch it? You know what I mean? Some of them already have their
I
minds.
just, you know, if I
Right.
were in their shoes and I'm being presented this huge stack of papers, but then they also
Yeah.
like send a little 5-minute video, I'm going to go watch the video,
Yeah.
which I can do at my convenience.
Right.
Anybody, like, you know, a big binder, they got to pass it around to all of them. And I just think easiest way would be to
Like when we
something.
watched that Lowell, Massachusetts hearing, and they started that hearing off with that Iowa news story,
Yes.
They should start this video off.
Yeah.
A little condensed version.
Yes. Like little
Yes.
snippets of the researchers on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
Because that makes it very legit, you know.
Perfect.
That's not that just them doing a presentation, you know, for whatever. This is them on Capitol Hill in front of Congress.
Because this hearing was condensed to what we went to in DC in December. You know, that hearing that we went, or not hearing, but that briefing that we went to in December was huge.
Yeah.
So this was like a condensed version of that.
It was.
They packed so much info in that.
It was condensed and it included advocates, which, you know, when we went back in December, we didn't get to go up and talk at all. It was just strictly researchers. But yeah, Heidi says that she's going to send the link to all the banned cities in Illinois, which I think is a great idea. But I think it would really be beneficial to have something that is just super condensed, the best
Needs
of,
to be chopped up. You know
Yes.
who we need to do that is Tim Chacall and Jordan Richard to chop it up.
That's an excellent.
Like how he did the documentary intro, the 5-minute thing.
Yeah.
That's
what we need done. We need just a nice, condensed, easy to watch, not a lot of fluff. While Heidi, I think it's a great idea to send that link to all of those banned cities in Illinois, but still, are they going to?
They're not going to watch a 2-hour link.
No, they're not going to watch 2 hours. Plus, it takes a while to get to all the good stuff, and yeah.
Yep. So I'll probably message Jordan and Tim about that.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah, Heidi says totally agree on condensing.
Yeah. Send it to like every news station just to see if they'll play it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm good at editing, but I don't have like editing apps and programs and tools. Like I'm not in that space, you know. I just use like TikTok or CapCut or something like that.
Yeah.
But the way that Jordan did the intro for the trailer, the movie trailer for The Green Miracle, you know, the way that he chopped all that up, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we watched that. That was so good.
It's a lot of stuff to think about, you know.
Oh, look at Kitty, big yawn in the background. She just did the biggest yawn.
I forgot she was sitting right there.
She's right there. She's looking towards us. Hi, Kitty.
Like, what the hell
Perfect
is that?
Oh, Becca's here. Hey, Becca. Good
Hey,
to see you.
Becca.
Hi, Becca.
We're doing one of our usual power sessions. We've been here for 2.5 hours. We just got through watching that entire congressional briefing. That was so good. So good.
It was amazing. Oh my gosh.
And to think that just happened yesterday morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Like barely 24 hours ago, you know, and I'm just like, I mean, I always have videos for us to watch, but it's like, no, that's way more important. We need to sit and watch the whole thing. There wasn't anything that was so pressing like we had to do today. So I figured we just watched that. So we'll just catch up on other stuff next week. I tell you, actually, I think maybe I'll play this real quick if nobody's in a rush. Dr. Kirsten Smith that we saw, she is so interesting. And there was an interview with her recently, a news report, I guess where she is from or where she lives.
Tennessee.
The problem is,
no, she's from.
She's from Knoxville. Yeah. Yeah.
The problem is it's I have to get it queued up because it's on that news station website, and then it plays a gazillion ads before. So
Did they post it on their YouTube?
I never saw it on YouTube. I mean, it's okay. I'll just play it off this. I just have to wait for I got queued. It's 3 minutes long. Y'all got to see this because after watching Dr. Kirsten Smith, for those that haven't seen, that don't know much about her, so she was the female researcher that talked early on. Her story is so interesting, and so it's just one of these crazy sites with all the pop-ups, though. You know how
I
those
thought it
news
was pretty cool
programs
though
are.
when I watched it, and they said that she was from Knoxville. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but but this was something I wanted everybody to see at some point. I mean, I'm sure some of y'all saw it, but just the fact that, like, since we just saw her with her presentation, that, you know, here she is, this like
Yeah, Becca, she's amazing.
that her story is incredible, and I love that she has a bunch of tattoos. I think she's just super cool and hip. All right, so I'm going to play this real quick for you guys, and let's watch it and talk about it.
In her early 20s, a Knoxville woman robbed 2 banks trying to get money for heroin. Today, she has a doctorate and is on the faculty at Johns Hopkins University, nationally recognized for her research into addiction and opiates. 10 News reporter Olivia Day sat down with Kirsten Smith today. And Olivia, she's in town to meet the same group of people who put her in federal jail.
And as crazy as all of that sounds, it's true. Leaders are hoping she can share some inspiration and wisdom today, considering how far she's come. She's meeting with a few folks who are graduating from a re-entry program, helping people who've been incarcerated. I spoke to her today to hear her incredible story.
I don't think anyone could have ever conceived that their child would rob a bank, right? Or 2 banks. Like, you don't think that's going to happen.
Kirsten Smith is an assistant professor at Johns Hopkins University. She studies addiction, but she also lived it. She grew up a normal kid in West Knoxville until she got into drugs.
You wonder, okay, well, how do people from these middle-class households in a good community end up strung out on drugs, doing illegal things?
At 16 years old, a classmate injected her with morphine.
Even though I tried many different drugs, like, I really liked that experience.
At 17, she dropped out of Bearden High School. In her early 20s, she says she was injecting pills or heroin daily. Things took a turn in 2007. After Kirsten lost her job, she needed more drugs, so she needed more money.
So I'm like, well, if I'm going to rob a place, I'll just rob a bank. And so I literally got up and went to the Sun Trust that was near my parents' house off North Shore.
Weeks later, she drove the getaway car for her boyfriend who robbed another bank. They both were arrested. She says time in Blount County Jail and a Florida federal prison taught her about herself.
I knew going back to college was going to be my path to rebuild.
Isn't that her kratom tattoo on her arm there on the right side? Right?
Oh, I don't know.
I think when they go
Before
back
she
to it, I'll
robbed a
show it.
bank, she was accepted at UT. They revoked that after a felony conviction. She got a master's in social work at Kentucky, hoping to become an addiction therapist.
You know, a lot of this
On the right side, or on her right, the top one, isn't that like
Yeah.
the what you call it? You
The
know,
molecule.
molecule Molly. Isn't that what that is? Isn't she one of those that has the molecule of
I
Mr.
don't know. I
Brown?
mean, she could, but I mean, she's like they could be any molecule because she's
I
a
don't know.
scientist lady.
Okay, I just didn't know if anybody knew for sure. Okay, I'll put this back on.
systems of care are just really, really broken.
Now she's in research, studying addiction and advocating for others.
We at least have to give people some kind of opportunity to prove that they are serious about changing.
Now, Kirsten also says her family never gave up on her, and that was the biggest thing that helped her kick her addiction. She also says it's not something she hides from, but it's a part of her. She's glad it's not top of mind every day. She's a runner, she's a dog mom, she's a sister. She knows she's more than her past. We'll share the rest of her story on WBIR.com.
That's so cool.
It
What a
is.
story.
If
What
that
a
doesn't give
story.
you hope, nothing will.
Yeah.
I mean, to be doing all the things she was doing, robbing banks and stuff, man. And look
I
at where
just like
she's
how
at
she
now.
tells it. Like, I just needed money. I figured I'd
Rob a bank.
You know, I say this all the time.
Right.
Addiction doesn't discriminate.
No, no.
Addiction does not discriminate.
Yeah.
You know, she grew up in a middle class type of family, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I kind of grew up in middle class, lower class, you know, area.
Yeah.
And, you know, addiction does not care.
Right.
Nope.
Heidi said it is when we were asking if that was the mitragynine tattoo. She said it is.
I just feel like I have more respect for people though, like when they have gone through so much more, and instead of like having things just handed to them.
Yeah.
You know, like you know,
Right.
she worked her ass off to be where she's at today, and I think it's awesome. I think people like her deserve to be where they're at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
100%.
You go from putting needles in your arm to being a professor at Johns Hopkins. And your
Katie
kitty agrees.
Kruger. Katie Kruger taking over the show.
She likes Dr. Kirsten Smith too.
Well, who doesn't? I mean, such a
It's
smart
also cool
lady.
to see
Our
these
opposition
scientists and
group.
researchers. They're like normal
True.
people, you know?
Yeah.
Our opposition group doesn't like her.
Yeah.
They're so mean.
Yep. We'll just cheers them with our Dr. Pepper.
I'm done. I got an empty can.
Peer pressure.
You know,
I-
Dr. Pepper.
I drank mine at the beginning of our
Mm.
show, 2 hours and 40 minutes ago. I love
Gotta
when we
have
do
that
these
Dr.
long ones.
Pepper.
It's almost time for my kratom, so I can stay pain-free. I think that's it for today's live stream.
Because of Kratom, we could do this.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Because of Kratom, you know, I didn't dose today because I wanted to see if I could sit through this without
Really?
being in pain times 10, you know.
I
and
wouldn't
I'm
be able
fine.
to.
You know,
That's
I just-
awesome.
And you did it.
off camera. Yeah, off camera.
I love how
was
you're
scratching my
always
back.
you always challenge yourself. You know, you're
Yeah.
always doing little challenges to yourself. That's
Yeah.
cool. I love that.
I mean, you know, I don't, just like our Kratom haters can't see how we're successful with it, and we have a hard time seeing where they fucked up at, but we know where they, well, like for me, I know where they fucked up at, you know?
Yeah.
I just continue challenging myself. Because, you know, people want to say that once an addict, always an addict. Well, why am I different? What happened to me?
Exactly.
Am I the anomaly? No, I worked on me. I worked on my whys of addiction.
Yeah.
MFers.
Good night, Becca.
You got that right.
Misty. You're so funny.
Bye, Becca.
Hi, Becca. So glad to see all the cool people here live commenting while we watch and hang out together. So it's always cool. We'll be back next Saturday to do it again. You know, we got to
Yep.
figure out if we're going to do like a special edition because we've also got those documentaries. We've got 2 of them that we still need to watch. We got that Dawn Hairpan, that's an hour long. And we got the Mysteries of Kratom, and that's an hour and 21 minutes. So what we could do, I guess just based on like how many important stories that come up between now and next week, we could try to, you know, watch the Indonesian one since it's an hour long and we just kind of watch it nonstop. I haven't watched it yet. I really want to see it, but I want to watch it with you all.
It's really
Yeah.
good.
Gotta
And
have
I'm
the
up
movie
whenever
day.
you guys are up to do it.
Yeah.
Gotta have the movie day. Just you'll take us off screen like that, and we'll just sit back and eat our snacks and drink Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, we just if we do like something extra, we just need to pick a day and time. So I guess we'll figure that out. There's just so much stuff to watch.
Yeah, there is. I mean,
A lot. Dr. Heidi says her mom says she really
Oh,
enjoyed
hey,
the
Mom.
show as always.
Aw,
Hi,
hi.
Heidi's mom. We have such a great community.
She's such a cool lady. Her
Yes.
mom, Dr. Heidi's mom, yeah, she's so cool.
She is.
Dr. Heidi's cool as tea.
And if people don't
They're
know,
ladies.
be sure and check out if you're not involved in our free private Kratom community, go to kratomrealtalk.com. We have so many new people that have been coming in there. They're asking tons of questions. So if you know you want to come in there and help answer people's questions, I know they will greatly appreciate it. And it's been super active lately. I wonder if it's because of all the issues with Facebook right now. With Facebook, you can't search the word Kratom and all that stuff right now. I just don't know. Do you think Facebook is going to get any better, Misty? I mean, you've been
Oh my
doing
God,
Facebook groups a long time.
I don't know.
It's very concerning.
Like, you know, because people talked about how it happened before, but they were targeting the Facebook groups about it, but they didn't do the blackout word search.
No.
Yeah.
It was in 2019 because I was pretty new. within the first few months, they took down the one that my initial one. It was so huge at the time. The one that Mike Gill runs. I don't know if y'all remember in 2019, it had like tens of thousands of people. And I was saving so many of the posts because it was at the beginning of my journey, and I was just learning so much from that group. And then Facebook just went on this rampage, and I'm pretty sure it was just against Facebook groups.
I know a lot. I've seen a few of them change their name.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's still, you can't change American Kratom Association.
That one had to start over, though. That one had to completely start over.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seemed like that was when people started changing the names of them to just be a little more incognito.
But even more recently with the word blackout, because you can't search. Like, it broke my heart yesterday because someone asked me if there was Facebook support groups, and I was like, yeah, but you can't search for them.
You just have to give them the direct link.
Right.
You just have to give them direct links.
Or you can Google it and put, so you can do like Kratom support groups, Facebook, and then it'll bring up stuff on Google.
That
and you can
probably
click on
would.
it.
Let me try that. I bet that would work.
Because that's how I get to like Kratom Stories podcast or, whatever. But I'll bring up the Facebook link to it.
I mean, if you know the direct link, of course, if I type in Google, Kratom support groups, Facebook, the first thing that pops up, help is available. Speak with someone today. 988 suicide and crisis lifeline, substance use support. Half the screen is showing me this with the phone number to call, the text, the website, and the chat. Further down, Facebook, quitting Kratom support. Below that, Kratom discussion group. Also, more quitting Kratom. It's just crazy how they do this on Google. Has definitely been a problem this year because for my Kratom Stories podcast, I have a Gmail, and it's Kratom Stories podcast at Gmail, and so many people don't get my emails. So I had to go get Madalyn at kratomstoriespodcast.com, but it also has Kratom in it, but that one seems to work better. What a mess.
It's just ridiculous,
All these loopholes.
If you have the direct, like Kratom Stories podcast, Facebook, you can't go in Facebook and search for it, but you can get to it. Like I have it linked on my website. If you're at kratomstoriespodcast.com, you click on Facebook, it'll take you right over there. Or you go in Facebook at the URL bar at the top, facebook.com/ and then manually type in Kratom Stories podcast after that. So you would need to know the name, like the full URL, or have it bookmarked already. You just have to find another way. But for somebody brand new, that's like a problem. Misty just can't say, go in the search and type in Kratom groups.
Oh, you know what? I just Googled Kratom Stories podcast Facebook, and it came up first was Kratom Miracles, Venus.
Oh, wow.
And then the second one, Kratom Stories podcast.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. Oh, we got and the Kratom Gals live. So
what'd you type in the search?
Kratom Stories podcast Facebook.
Oh.
And it comes up with Kratom Miracles, Kratom Stories podcast, Kratom Gals.
Interesting. Oh yeah, look at that. Interesting.
I guess it just depends on which ones you're.
I think that's what I think too.
It's just so ridiculous. I mean, it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah, Cam, we saw when they were talking about that with the tox reports, the 70H, and that's only identifies the MIT, so can't differentiate. And it's very frustrating for us as advocates because somebody could sit here and take too much 70H, have a very adverse reaction, but guess what they're going to say? Their reaction was from Kratom.
Yeah, someone just asked on my TikTok video, because while we were watching this, I clipped that part and posted on my TikTok. So someone just asked, can you OD from it? There's no studies. I don't know how to answer that question.
They've tried. It does.
For the 70H by itself.
Oh, for 70H.
There's no way.
That we don't know. But with regular
on mitragynine, they can't even kill a small freaking rat.
Yeah.
No.
With mitragynine, right? So, yeah. All right, gals. We've officially been here for 2 hours and 49 minutes. marathon session. This has been so good today. We cried, laugh. We learned a lot. If y'all
Got some
anybody
goosebumps.
if anybody missed the cry laugh segment, you're just gonna have to go watch the whole thing
Yeah.
on replay to get to it.
Yep.
Because believe me, it's worth waiting for. It was so funny. So yeah, we'll be back next week. We'll figure out when we do the bonus episode of catching up on the documentaries. So we'll see y'all soon.
Thanks for
Kratom
coming,
Gals.
everybody.
Stomping out.
See you
Stomping
later.
out.
And share this live stream or the one directly that we just watched, which is on the American Kratom Association. It's on their YouTube, it's on their Facebook. And definitely share so people can see what the experts are saying. We got to just help spread the word and get that out there. So y'all be sure to
Oh, bye, Rebecca.
help us. Oh, Rebecca.
I didn't even see you in here.
Yeah, thank y'all, friends,
Bye-bye.
for being here. Always appreciate seeing you all. And we'll be back soon. Y'all have a great rest of your Saturday. Bye, y'all.
See you
Bye.
later.